All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics and Local America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Today, y'all know it's time for All Politics or Local. So, of course, y'all know up first, it's going to be the mayor. Y'all know if it is the um, third Friday, y'all know it's time for the mayor's forum. So he's going to be up first. We're waiting on him to jump on. And then what's coming up after that, Zaid, at 6:30?
I think Jonathan wants to jump in and talk a little bit more about Iran. He's got very uh, taken with Iran in a very healthy way. I'm glad to see that. At 6:30, 7 o'clock. Some young people I'm very proud of that I work with on the side, and that's the Patterson Healing Collective. It's getting ready to launch their 5-year symposium. The Patterson Healing Collective is the Patterson answer to the Newark Community Street Team, doing great work on community-based violence intervention at a hospital and in the streets of Patterson. They had a big symposium coming up on March 31st. 7:45. Uh, I'm looking forward to this. Myra Lawson, I haven't seen Myra in years. Who's the executive director of the Weequahic High School Alumni Association. Weequahic High School has a very serious alumni association,
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
old alumni association.
Right.
She's going to be talking to our own Asia Norton about a scholarship program that's coming up. Uh, and of course at 8:30, Baba Tony Vandermeer will return, and he will be talking about the National Conference in Black Studies and the drama that we're looking at in Cuba. And he will be joined by our own Professor Akil Kalfani. They met each other at the conference.
Okay.
They both have their own lens on Cuba, so that we'll it'll be a very important, very timely conversation on Cuba. There's a convoy of solidarity heading towards Cuba that's all supposed to meet up there tomorrow on the 21st. So a lot's going on there.
And let me ask you a question, Zaid. So there's no issues with getting into Cuba at this point?
There are always issues. Blockade is real. It's how you deal with them.
Right. Right. Right.
Everybody's not accepting the bullying of Uncle Sam, and we have been finding ways to go in and out of Cuba for years to get around the madness of this blockade. So this is solidarity movements from different parts of the world, not just from here in the United States, vowing to give support and solidarity to Cuba, uh, just as a matter of principle on the one hand, and as a matter of gratitude on the other, because Cuba has been so incredibly uh, selfless with sharing everything that she has had with the world, like no other country has in recent years. So there should be greater solidarity, quite frankly.
Right.
Solidarity is indeed coming, and solidarity is indeed genuine for those who are doing it.
It's funny, Zaid. What I was thinking, man, when that blackout happened, I was thinking, is this some sort of test on the behalf of the Trump administration and Marco Rubio? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
With seeing how they could, black out the country and how they could move in the country in the dark and all of that, and setting up things to take over. Because Rubio, I mean, even though he's a Cuban, he hate the leadership in the country.
Rubio represents the generation, the young generation of what we call them Gusanos, of those Cubans who left during the revolution. His family, though, and this is how him and Cruz out of Texas.
Mm.
So they claim to be protesting the lack of democracy in Cuba around Fidel, but their families actually left under Batista,
Okay.
right? And Batista was a straight up fascist in service to the United States, right? So they have never known democracy as they claim to, right? Because Cuba was not about no democracy up under Batista. That's why that revolution happened, right? But the fact that this group of white Cubans, and that's what they are, white Cubans, have gotten this privilege and been treated with privilege in a way comparable to what we see with Israelis, right? Think they have an exclusive hold on anything having to do with Cuba coming out of the United States. And if the opportunity presented itself, they would have the right to return to Cuba as rulers.
Wow. They
ain't no food awakening if they try that mess, right? Because Cuba's not giving away they're not giving away their country.
yeah.
Right? But that is the mentality.
And the other thing is, I think that folk need to be clear, at least from my vantage point, Cuba is not Venezuela.
No, it's not.
And so, if that blackout and they were trying to surveil it to see if they can just scoop in and snatch the leader and then overthrow Cuba. The conversations I was having with some of the brothers and sisters, in California, they were telling me that, let's be clear, the Cubans will defend their homeland.
They sure will.
And
they've been preparing for it for decades. They've lived with this threat for decades. So they know that this is the most serious any threats have come in a long time, but they take those threats very seriously.
Yeah, and I remember, Cuba, when Minister Farrakhan said that that they were offering African American students who wanted to be doctors to come through and study in Cuba, man.
That's already happening. It's been happening for years now, right? The school is called ELAM, or the Inter-American School, Medical School in Cuba, right? We've got a young filmmaker right here in Newark named Jennifer Wager, who's got a critically acclaimed film on the school. In fact, we showed it when we did our recent tribute to Asada after Asada passed.
What's the name of the school again? It's called ELAM?
ELAM, ELAM, right? That's the acronym that they use, right? You remember Bill Sales?
Yes.
Bill Sales' daughter is a doctor who went through medical school in Cuba for free, right? So we got folks that we know who've been through these programs, and we've got folks from this area. The story, this is how that developed. The Cubans had the school for some time, right? But if you'll remember, and this is not easy to talk about because it actually involves somebody from this community that we care about who made a mistake, right? Around the time that Christine Whitman was governor, and they put that first big bounty on Asada's head, right? And the Pope went to Cuba, right? Before Whitman tried to reach the Pope to tell the Pope to tell the Cubans to give up Asada, she went to the Congressional Black Caucus,
okay,
right, to get them to okay that, right? And they did, right?
Wait. Who went to the Congressional Black Caucus?
Christine Whitman when she was governor.
Okay. Wow.
This is 1999, right? Wow. Yes. And then the Congressional Black Caucus went with that mess.
Oh my God.
Right? And I had to, and I was really heartbroken because I'll tell you why.
Okay.
The late Donald Payne Sr. was in Congress then, knows Asada well. When he was on city council in Newark, when Asada was going on trial, he did a stellar study on juries in New Jersey, coming to the conclusion and documented evidence.
Right.
Asada was to have a jury of a trial by a jury of her peers that would have to happen in Essex County, right? So intimately familiar with Asada, right? And we said to Congressman Payne, why didn't you speak up and stop that, right? He said nothing, right? Maxine Waters said she used the name Chesimar. We didn't know who she was.
Oh.
So, I'm going to tell you, we had to turn up some heat on all of them. I did a rally on Congressman Payne in Newark. Broke my heart to have to do that, but I did it, right? We had to throw rocks at Maxine Waters. We didn't want to do that, but, when we questioned her about it, she got arrogant and nasty. Oh, no, hell no. We're not taking this from you or anybody else.
Right.
Right? So what was Fidel's response? Fidel's response was to bring them to me. Bring them all to me. I got them. And he showed them with the Cuban reality. He showed them how they've been taking care of people like Asada all over the world for decades. He showed them how they share everything. He showed them the hospital and started the scholarship program. This is back in 1999. And then ultimately, you know, our local congressman would then ultimately become the beacons for processing applications, for folks from this area to go. So, you know, some accountability had to be had.
Right.
But you know, it's an old story, and it's a great story, right? It's a great story of how Cuba has always been. I'm going to use the language palenque. It's a Spanish word for a liberated zone, for oppressed people from all over the world. You know, they have a small island off of Cuba that they call the Isle of Youth, where they train students from Namibia and South Africa and all those places that were, you know, at battle with the apartheid regime or their colonial masters and all that stuff. You know, the Palestinian, all of that. You know, right. They've always been a beacon to give training, schooling, and material solidarity to the oppressed from all over the world. And of course, they took the best of care of Asada and took it deeply personal.
So Zaid, I know you've been to Cuba multiple times. Let's talk about the culture of Cuba, right? You know, I mean, it's primarily, you know, Black Cubans that are in Cuba, and education is free, right? And healthcare is free.
All of that,
right? And what about living and all of that? What is that like?
They share. See, at the heart of socialism is simple. It's the principle of sharing everything. They share. And things get tough, they share more. You know, they share. It's really not complicated. But to your question, I want you to appreciate. I'm coming back to Fidel. Can you remember when Barbara Walters interviewed him years ago?
Yeah.
And you remember the question that she asked him, and he blew a little white mind away when she asked, "Mr. Castro, why are you in Angola? Why are you in Africa?" And what was his answer? Because Cuba is an African country.
Wow.
And culturally, it is. Right. Let's remember, you know, settler colonialism is throughout the Americas. United States is the bastion of settler colonialism, right? It did more. It was the most violent in its segregation of those populations that it settled on, meaning our people and the indigenous people, right? But Cuba did not end slavery, its trafficking, or its domestic slave trade until 1884. That's a whole generation after our Civil War, right. Just a minute from the 20th century, right? And so you had this population that was heavily mixed with an African base, right? That has been at the fore of their culture for decades. Now, you know, in their repressive modes, African people have gone through some things, you know, like in the 30s and when they've been in the 50s, there've been some difficult periods right. In Cuba, socially and politically, by virtue of, you know, their, you know, neo-colonial relationship with the United States and their own dance with fashion. I mentioned Batista before Fidel, you know, while people were catching hell in Cuba under regimes like his, right? But whenever they've had a chance to express themselves socially, culturally, or politically, it was always to the fullest. The country to have the largest chapters of Mr. Garvey's UNIA outside of the United States, guess where that was? Cuba.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
And if you go to Cuba today and run into some brothers that are like our age and up, And if they have served in Angola, that's the first thing they're going to tell you. They're going to pound their chest and say Angola, because that's how they went back to Africa. They didn't. Fidel was, Marcus was talking about, trade and, dual citizenship and repatriation, and the natural reconnection of us going back to Africa in a social and an economic way, right? Our folks from Cuba went back to Africa militarily, right? And literally whooped the apartheid regimes behind in defense of Angola and created a lane for Namibia and the ANC and the PAC to end apartheid as we know it.
And what's that relationship like today?
Oh, it's tremendous. The solidarity between Cuba and Africa has always been huge. We have a saying, when Africa called, Cuba answered, and it's always been huge. There's a profound appreciation for Cuba and Africa. Profound. Ebola broke out. Their medical program, they call it the Henry Reeves Medical Brigade, right? They sent their doctors, like they send their doctors all over the world. They sent their doctors to combat that Ebola plague and made a real difference. So there's this long standing relationship between the Cuban Revolution and the African world is profound. It's absolutely profound.
And so then, what is the real issue then, Zaid? So when you talk about, those two twin guys in California, you talk about Marco Rubio. What's the real issue then? If Cuba offers this kind of freedom fighting for freedom fighters and training for young people who want to be doctors, and socialism works where people pull together, what's the real issue with these guys?
Well, you actually just said it. Socialism, given a chance, can work, right? They're not socialists. They are boys, in service to a capitalist order that they feel owes them the priority and the opportunity of whenever it comes to rule that island as they see fit.
Wow. So they want to
turn,
so they really want to turn Cuba into a capitalist society.
Oh yeah, they would turn it on his head in a heartbeat if they had an opportunity to do that. And they would, and you would ultimately see it would wind up being a civil war on the island if they were ever to try to do that.
Right.
Because Cuba has done too much, lived too much, shared too much, made too much history to just capitulate to something like that. They're not like, Democrats in America. They're not like that. They're not like that. Right.
Right.
They're going to fight.
Is Cuba still offering asylum to people from around the country, around the world?
It's always, they always have.
Okay.
They always have. They always have, and they do it as a matter of principle.
I tell you, Zaid,
go ahead. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that, when I remember Minister Farrakhan when he went visiting Cuba, and this was during the height of that whole AIDS outbreak.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was a sister, I forget her name, but she was a doctor, and she used to come on Imhotep Gary Bird show all the time.
Probably Barbara Justice.
Dr. Barbara Justice, right.
She was my doctor for a couple minutes.
Huh?
She was my doctor for a couple minutes.
Yeah, and somebody says she's in California,
She's
right?
in California now. Yeah, she left the area, but she was Harlem bred.
Yeah. She she actually was on the board of a school called Nairi in New Brunswick.
Yes, that's right.
My nephew graduated. That's how I know
her. Nairi Institute.
Yeah, my nephew graduated from Nairi, and I got to tell you, man, all of them brothers and sisters at Nairi was dope.
Oh,
man. You had brothers and sisters who had doctorates and PhDs teaching high school kids, man.
It was a great run. Nairi had a great run.
But yeah,
great run.
And it was that model that all of the other models that were coming along, like Chad and all of that in Newark, they were
That's
trying to model themselves after Nairi
hmm
with what they were doing. Because I'm telling you, Zaid, my nephew he
and
went through,
close to Newark,
huh?
they got their ideas. This is all out of the Baraka Brain Trust. This is
Right,
we
right.
had the African Free School under Amina Baraka, and
That's right. That's right.
Nairi is an offshoot of that.
That's right. That's right. But in my mind, because and remember, Zaid, I'm a benefactor of when Amina and Baraka primarily started those African schools at Robert Treat High School, at Robert
Yes,
Treat Grammar School. I
yes,
was a student there, so I'm a
yes,
benefactor of all of that, right?
yes, you are. Yes,
And so that's where Black folk in the 60s and 70s were getting their consciousnesses, particularly their children, me. And but when I think about where we are now, right? I don't know if you saw this post I put up, but I put up a post where there was this sister who was a CIA agent, right? And she said that she one day she was doing her homework with her children. She said normally her husband does the homework, but she said she was doing the homework with her children, and what she discovered is that the African history that they were teaching their children were African history where they were teaching their children that they were nothing more than slaves. That
hmm
was it. That was
hmm
the limit of Black people's contribution in America, and that somehow what white folk had done by going to Africa and capturing Black folks and then bringing them here and enslaving them, they were doing us a favor. And Zaid, this sister lost her mind, bro.
And she was working with the CIA.
She was a major uh, uh, a major officer in the CIA. And she said that she struggled against that with agents, right? Trying to make sure that the agents understood that when they saw Black people, they didn't see criminals, right? But here they were, these particular schools, and she was saying her children went to some of the top grammar schools. And she was saying, here's what was being taught to her children. Right.
And
So when we talk about those Nairis and those African schools and all of those things, Zaid, I think that's one of the problems we're having today, man. Right. I
yes,
think that when you talk to our people, the majority of our people don't have the education, and I'm not talking about being lawyers. I'm not talking about being doctors. I'm not talking about being school teachers or scientists. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the cultural history that
hmm
would allow you to love yourself, but
hmm
more importantly, love other Black people.
hmm hmm
We don't have that.
hmm
And you remember, Zaid, I know when I say this to you, you're gonna remember this. You remember in the 90s when Imhotep Gary Bird was on WLIB,
hmm
right? And remember every day
I
you
used to
heard,
go to the Apollo periodically just to hang. That's how I used to hang out.
that's right.
Just to
You
sit in the
remember,
audience, listen to the show.
yeah. And you remember it was an education every day.
Yeah.
And most people who didn't know anything about the Nguzu Saba, you learned the Nguzu Saba because Bird not only brought that to the consciousness of Black people every day, he taught it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's
So,
right.
so
That's
we
right.
understood what the Nguzu Saba was. Now we don't even. I mean, we're lucky if we get that during Kwanzaa,
hmm
right? Because most Black folks don't even celebrate Kwanzaa like we used to.
Yeah, it's growing in other places, right? But it may have peaked here in the States. It's interesting that you said that. It's growing in other places, but it may have peaked here. And we definitely need to fix that.
Yeah. And so when you look at what's happening around the world, Zaid, and you look at other places, in other cultures, it seemed like we're getting away from that, right? And that's why I mean I think you saw this text that came from Dr. Kafani when he said he's talking about this African spiritual uh, healing thing that he got going on over the over.
Tomorrow he does a 1-day symposium on African spiritual traditions every
Right.
year. Tomorrow, and we had him on a couple of weeks ago, just lifting that up.
Right.
He should join us tonight.
Yeah, and Zaid, that is necessary, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely,
because there's no one talking about that level of spiritual consciousness because we are a spiritual people, and we need to be having those types of conversations. But as a people, Zaid, we've sort of lost touch with all of that, and I think that's why when these folks be talking about we've lost our African mind, that's what they're talking about.
That's what college used to say.
Huh?
That's what college used to say.
Yeah.
They'll come to free your mind and save your black.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's completely out of control, my brother. I mean, we've got to get back to that. And I'm gonna tell you something, man. I don't know if the mayor's gonna be able to make it tonight, but that was one of the things I was gonna talk about too, where we talk about black folk need leadership, brother. We need leadership. And unfortunately, we all are trying to operate now like we don't need leadership. And that's crazy.
I wonder. This is something that's been in the back of my head, and we went backwards almost immediately after it happened. But I really there's some real questions that our community needs to self-critically ask about how it reacted to the election of Barack Obama. Did we accept that as being, us making it to the promised land and us not having to worry about the madness of this racist society anymore or anywhere like how we had 2 years prior? Because and not realizing, of course, as soon as he was elected, white folks geared themselves for another round of what we historically call a white backlash, right? And we are in the midst of a high wave of a white backlash, But I really wonder if we actually let our collective guard down much too low.
Yeah.
And find ourselves in the place of not being positioned to fight for those things that we need to be seriously fighting for at this particular historical moment.
Yeah.
I want to shout out our brother Principal Kafele chimed in, echoing your sentiments around those days when those Apollo days. It were tough days for me because I was out of work, in and out of that decade for a minute, so I would run over there for my sanity.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We had the Mart 125 across the street.
Mm-hmm.
It was the vibration was decent in Harlem back then. Harlem had a little more of its soul back then. Yeah. Even Harlem, is going through a modest gentrification.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. But Zaid, I think that's what's missing, brother. I think we need to find a way to bring that level of consciousness back on deck.
Oh yeah, it comes with organizing.
Yeah,
it comes with organizing. We got a guest popping in. Right, we missed the mayor. We apologize, everybody. We miss Mayor Baraka, but he's running a city.
That's right.
You're going to have your hands full when you run in the city. And we look forward to his return on the next third Friday at his usual time.
We have our 6:30 guest that is in the building, and is John supposed to be joining this conversation with us?
I'm not sure. He did not say. He said he will be in Atlanta, but he definitely curated this segment. So I hope he does join it. But I know we are in good hands with the great Miss Myra Walton. Myra, I haven't seen you in quite some time. How are you, dear Queen?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad for a crazy old man.
Well, I guess that's what keeps us going, right? The crazy.
Now, you're going to be joined in the Mississippi Minute by Asia Norton, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
She was kind enough to invite me, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Now, tell everybody why we got you. So, we're not going to have dead air on the radio. We can't do
Oh,
that.
sure.
We
I
got to
don't
talk.
know if you know, but I've been leading the Weequahic High School Alumni Association for about 14 years
Yeah,
now.
it's been a minute. It's been a
Yeah, it
minute.
is quite a bit. And
Take a beat now. Hold on. Take a beat. On that note, let's
yes,
go back and tell folks about the history, character, and legacy of that alumni association because it's got true long legs and it's had it for a long time. Tell everybody about that alumni association.
yes, it is 28 years old, and it is made up of uh, people that graduated from Weequahic, actually from the 1930s up to the present day.
From the
Um,
1930s.
yes,
Wait a
yes,
minute. Did you say the Alumni Association is 28 years old?
yes,
Wow. Nice.
28 years old.
Okay.
We
The
have,
fact that it could attract people from that far back speaks to a pride and a real connection to a school that obviously cared about them when they were there.
exactly. And not only did the school care about them, but they are totally invested in the students that are graduating now in to going to college or technical trade schools. So during that time period, we have raised over $1 million, and we have
Whoa. I want everybody to process what you're saying, sister.
Nice.
raised and provided over $1 million to students to go to college and continue their education, not only in college, but also in technical trade school. Not only have we support,
Hold
yeah,
on.
go ahead.
We gotta shake that sugar bag, right? Now, Ed Riley, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
In all them schools and then our HBCUs and all that, how many alumni associations do you know that ride like that?
I don't know any, and I'm a member of 3 of them.
Well, we're a high school alumni association, so we really can't compete with the college alumni associations, but we try. And we have provided this support to over 700 students over the years. And not only do we give new graduates money, but we also help students that are currently in school to get them to that finish line where they have that piece of paper in their hand.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Wow. Wow. That is huge.
Can you name some of the students who graduated from Weequahic High School, and you know is the school pride today what it was back then? Is that still the way it is?
I would say that the school pride is pretty strong, not as strong as it used to be, only because we had a hiccup in our history when the state had control of the schools. And that's another whole different story.
Okay.
But some of our graduates include Chowdhury Kenny, who I believe is going to be on the call tonight,
Oh, I didn't know.
the late Sheila Oliver,
Okay.
okay, Philip Roth, Pulitzer Prize winner,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, the doctor who the Beth Israel Heart Center is named after, and I'm sorry, I forgot his name because I wasn't expecting this particular question. But we have a number of notable graduates that have made a lot of headway in the fields of literature, um, the law,
Mm-hmm.
teaching,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
government, politics, the arts. So we're very proud of our legacy.
And this was and if I'm not mistaken, because I remember, I didn't live in the in the South Ward. I lived in the Central Ward, and I remember when my sister lived in the South Ward. She lived in the building when they were first built. It was the Weequahic Towers.
Okay.
And I remember how beautiful that building was right there on Elizabeth Avenue.
Yes.
I used to go swimming in that building when I was a child, right? How
Yes.
beautiful the apartments were, the swimming pool, and of course the Weequahic Park and all of that. And I remember I always felt like I was a child now. I always felt like Weequahic High School was one of those schools you had to be picked to go to, right? And because I always thought that, you gotta remember, I went to Barringer, I went to Robert Treat High School, and so Robert Treat Grammar School, and so that all the way on the other end, I always thought those folks who lived over there had money because those beautiful houses were over there, those beautiful apartment buildings were over there, and I always thought you all that went to Weequahic was somewhat bougie.
Well, I wasn't. I lived in Dayton Street Projects, and I went to Weequahic High School, and most of my friends did not have a lot of money.
Right.
What we had in that school was we had some of the best teachers who really put a lot of value on education. And I graduated in 1970.
I wasn't
So
going to
my-
ask you that.
Well, yeah. So my parents, they came up from the South through segregation. And at that time, a lot of our parents put a lot of value on education.
Yes, ma'am, they did.
So they actually.
Yeah, that's something we lost. To talk back to our previous conversation.
Okay, I didn't hear the previous conversation.
That's all right. He knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but like our parents, like the parents of the generations before us at Weequahic put a lot of value on education. So they made sure that we got everything we were supposed to get. And the teachers there were phenomenal. And the generation of students that were there before me, a lot of them came from Jewish immigrant families.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, a lot of immigrant families, their first generations in this country, education, education, education.
Yes, ma'am.
Right now at Weequahic, we have a large African and Caribbean population of students, and those parents put a lot of emphasis on education.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing I will say about Weequahic. They have always valued the importance of education and giving back to the community. So preparing the kids, for positions in society once they leave, where they're not only just focused on getting rich and wealthy, but also in ways that they can, benefit the community once they leave the school.
Go ahead, Ed. I'm sorry.
In 1970, was the school mixed, or was it primarily Black at that point?
When I started Weequahic in 1966, the school was still, I would say, 2/3 white and Jewish. And then we had the riots. And when I came back as a sophomore, the whole dynamics had changed. The school had pretty much kind of did a flip. So it was almost 2/3 African American and 1/3 white, because a lot of the Jewish people had left, but the teachers, many of them were still there. So there was a distinct flip in the student population.
Yeah, because I could remember as a child going on Bergen Street, going on Chancellor, going on Lines, and this was in the 60s and 70s, and I can remember, and I still got family that owned one of those really, really big homes that looked like a mansion. I can remember I used to see white folks walking the streets around there, as a child, And I remember the banks in the area, the businesses in the area, um, and it felt like another level of downtown, right? Like you could go downtown Newark with Bambergers and all of that, S. Klein's and all those stores. But when you went to the Southport, particularly in that area, um, it felt like how when you're in New York, you can go on Fifth Avenue, Park Avenue. You felt a different level of class of black folks and white folks who were living together.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. You when you talk about 66, and then of course, what happened with the uprising, and then of course that, how all of that came about. The South Ward was such a beautiful place at that particular time. It's absolutely incredible. And some of those houses are still there too. And they're
That's
still
true.
great.
I still live in the South Ward.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. And that Bergen Street corridor and Lyons Avenue and Chancellor had a lot of small businesses.
Yeah.
And a lot of them did, go away after the uprising, which is kind of sad for our whole community.
Yeah, I wanted you actually to take a beat and share. I was talking to some having a public safety conversation yesterday for the city with our deputy director and her Office of Violence Prevention and some of the new recruits on the police department, and I had to give them a history lesson, right? And we give history lessons here. So I share everybody your impressions of the change, the transformation, and the I would dare say the attack on the community that came as a consequence of the '67 uprising. And you were getting ready to address Bergen Street, and
I think it was more than just the uprising that affected our city at that time. I think it was the building of 78, which disrupted community completely.
Big South Ward, yes.
It was it had a huge impact on our community. The other things that I will say had a huge disruption in our community at that time were drugs. They were coming into the community like water.
But I never really felt. I always felt that drug epidemic, at least my growing up in the city, um, at that time. I mean, you're probably a little older than I am, but at that time, I always thought that because of what I saw on Sterling Street and Howard Street, at the projects and all of that in that area, I always thought that the drugs were there. That's why when I visited the South Ward, it always seemed like a whole different part of Newark, because as close as I would get um, over to that side, sometime would be that White Castle, right? And then it wasn't until I'm telling you the truth.
White Castle's got a history too.
The White Castle that's still there. That was there when I was a little girl.
Yeah, right?
We had a really bad drug problem. I mean, it might not have been as noticeable as the center of the city, but people were dibbling and dabbling in marijuana and pills and everything, and then they started getting hooked on different drugs. It was just a reality. I mean, my family fell victim to it. Almost everyone that I knew was affected by drugs. So I would say personally, those were the two biggest impacts on the South Ward. The highway, which disrupted our neighborhoods, and the drugs. Oh, and there's a third thing. There used to be a lot of factories in this particular area also, which people may not remember, down Watson Avenue, Frelinghuysen Avenue.
Oh, yeah, in the back.
And a lot of those factories after the uprising, because of the highway, moved out of the city. And we could not necessarily follow that employment out of the city because there was no mass transit out of the city. So if you didn't have a car, you couldn't follow that job out of the city. So I think that was also another impact on our community.
But would you say that at that time that the South Ward, more so than any other part of Newark where black folks were, that the Southport was primarily a middle class part of Newark.
Yes, I would say that. I would. Because people, black people in particular, were able to start coming in and buying up the houses and the real estate in the area that they weren't able to buy before.
Right. That's what because I remember even when I was a child, I remember uh, Eugene Campbell, who was my principal, his sister, Miss Beckford, lived in the South Ward. And I could remember visiting her apartment in the South Ward. And it was just it was night and day from where we live going over there, to because when you think about those particular black folks versus those black folks where we're on Sterling Street, where Mary Baraka lived across the street from me, the big red, black, and green house. It seemed like a whole different world that I would travel to when I visited my sister. Her husband at the time worked at PSE&G. She worked at Martin Medical Center. These were different kind of black people to me. You know, and their children going to Weequahic High School. It felt like a whole another world. And so so now, when you look at Weequahic and you talk about you all were able to raise $1 million, I'm not surprised by that. I'm not surprised because I think that, when I look at that place now and you think about the history of that place, right, of the South Ward versus other wards, it was absolutely a beautiful place. Do you remember that, Zaid?
Well, I wasn't in Newark as a child.
Okay.
I wasn't in Newark as a child, but my stepfather was, and so I had my own experience in and out of Newark as a child through my stepfather at the time. So y'all definitely had a far more intimate a picture and taste of that reality than I did. I came into Newark to live and work and go to school a bit later. But my observations, my first grasp of Newark was downtown in the South Ward.
Yeah.
Right. My stepfather kept the place in the South Ward, even when we were all together. He kept his ties and all. I don't. You might know him, Miss Myra. Does name Calvin Hill mean anything to you?
Calvin Hill. He sounds familiar.
Was one of the top supervisors in the post office for years.
Okay.
And so everybody worked in the post office.
Okay. Well, I as a child, I remember Newark as being a very segregated place. Like every
Yes.
ethnicity had its own neighborhood, and you just kind of stayed there. So when you did go out to other neighborhoods, you were either welcome or you felt like you didn't belong there.
Yes.
But I grew up in the South Ward, but not necessarily in the Weequahic section. So, I understand that, when you see different neighborhoods and it looks like people are really living large, they're not actually living any better than you are. They just have more money. That's it.
Yeah. And I can remember, going fishing in that park over there. That was such a beautiful park.
It still is.
Yeah. Listen, I haven't been over there to be able to lay out over there like I did when I was a kid. Back in the day, remember they used to have events over in that park all the time.
Yeah.
When I was a kid.
Yeah.
And you couldn't it would be cars parked everywhere. You had to walk, damn near from the White Castle to get to the park.
Oh, well, you should come visit. It's still a beautiful park. The county does still maintain it. It has a new field house. I guess that's what you call it, a community center.
Yes.
It has a really nice jogging track that goes around the lake, and it has several ball fields that are always full on Saturdays and Sundays. So you should come visit.
I'm definitely gonna. I'm in the Southport all the time. I just haven't been in the park really in years.
Just drive through and stop one day and take a little walk.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm definitely gonna make it my business, to do that. As
And
I
we
said,
have
I
the
grew up,
lake.
huh?
And we have the lake.
Yeah.
The lake.
And is the lake cleaned up now? How is the lake?
Well, they clean it every few years or so. I mean, we still have people throwing garbage in it, especially in the side of the lake that people don't uh, walk by, the Route 22 side. But the rest of the lake is pretty okay. People are still going there and fishing.
Can you still get on rowboats and paddle boats?
No,
No.
no, that ended a long time ago.
Yeah, that's cool.
You
Yeah.
see how far back I go. See,
Yes,
I remember.
they had a horse race track there. That track is still there, but now it's a beautiful new track and field facility that the county uses and schools use to practice. They tore down the bleachers that used to be there, and they haven't had boating there in decades. I
Yeah,
don't think that they'll ever bring that back.
yeah. That. I remember that as a kid. That was beautiful. You know,
Yes, it was.
be able to get out there and do that. And this was Newark. You see, so when we talk about how beautiful the South Ward was, and you talk about downtown Newark, and I remember the Central Ward with all of the courthouses and all of that. I remember when they were building Essex County College. I remember that as a child. I played over there with the Baraka kids, when I was young.
And Essex.
Yeah, I graduated from Essex. That was the first college
Really? I
I gra-
worked at Essex County College when they were down on Clinton Street and then when they moved up to University Avenue.
Yeah, I graduated from them. I went there when they were on University Avenue. When
Okay.
they came
Okay.
to University Avenue, and
Yeah.
and I'm telling you, it Newark at that time, the wards, like South Ward, Central Ward, where you had this, strong concentration of some very powerful black political folk who came out of the city and moved into, like, even with the Pains in the South Ward,
Hmm.
uh, and not leaving but staying. How important that was for young black people to be able to see those people who, and even now, like Mayor Baraka, who still lives in the South Ward, right?
Right.
Be able to see that, is so important, I believe, for young black folks to be able to see the people who run their government living right next to them. That's important for these young people. I don't
Well,
know if they value that as much today as I did when I was a child.
well, when I was growing up, our community was pretty diverse. So almost all of our teachers lived in the South Ward, in the Weequahic section.
Wow.
Right.
The business people lived in the South Ward. Um, we had the police and the firemen living like right next door to us. So, it wasn't like you didn't have these role models around. They were around us all the time because where else were they going to live except among us, their own people.
Right.
And, I guess as people got, wealthier, that started to change. So we don't have those role models necessarily in our community anymore, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, they did, because even my family members who were business owners on Bergen Street, who owned a construction company. What happened is that when the neighborhood began to change, they actually well, they rented out some of the homes that they had, the 3-family houses and so forth, first, second, third floors. But what they did was is they moved to Piscataway, right? They would come back, run their business, and collect their money, but they no
Right,
longer sleep in the South Ward. They were now
right.
sleeping down in Piscataway. And Zaid, that was the conversation I was having when I told you that, my nephew and them who were from Newark ended up going to Nyeri, which was in New Brunswick, but they were from
Oh,
Newark,
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
right?
Uh-huh.
And but the family was from the South Ward,
Hmm.
right? But when the and this was during the time, of the integration and so forth, but all of that changed, you know,
Hmm.
and so but let me ask you a question. Asia Norton isn't here, so how does Asia Norton come to all of this?
How do I know her?
I mean, how does she, how does she come to, the great alumni of Weequahic and all of that?
Oh, well, I have to say she has, I met her when she was on the Newark Board of Education. And she has always been a supporter of the Weequahic High School Alumni Association and what we do. Just to be brief, I don't know when the show actually starts or if it started already, but not only do we raise money for scholarships, but we have also provided the school with other resources over the years. So, for example, when the school system had to shut down because of COVID, we purchased 200 Chromebooks for students so that every student at the school would be able to study at home.
200. Wow.
When they started their allied health program several years ago, we purchased scrubs for the students that participate in the program so they would actually feel like they're working, in a medical environment. Some years ago, the band needed uniforms. We actually partnered with the Newark Fire Department and did 3 shaker boots to raise money for instruments and band uniforms. And our alumni raised a lot of money so that they were able to outfit the band and get new instruments because they didn't have the money in the budget.
Mm.
So, there's other things that we've done for the school. We purchased a new washer dryer for them a couple of years ago. So even though our primary mission is to provide scholarships, we've also acted as almost like a foster parent when the school has really needed money that they didn't get from the Board of Education or from the state when it was under the state control. When the school was under state control, there were a couple of years they couldn't even pay their National Student Honor Society dues. So we stepped in. And every time that the school has had some kind of a need like that, we do what we can to support them.
Well, I mean, it is.
And Asia has been very helpful in that aspect.
Very good. Awesome.
Yeah.
She has come to our events in the past, another thing which we have very much appreciated because we have to raise money. If we don't raise the money, then we can't continue doing what we're doing.
Well, I mean, I would have loved to have heard that interview between you and her. I know she loves the South Ward. I know she's the daughter of the South Ward. And of course, she's one of our co-hosts here. So we're going to have to try to reschedule that so you can definitely talk with her and so we can get that. But I've enjoyed talking to you and going down memory lane.
Well, thank you.
Board. And so, I mean, I'd love to, go back and talk about that at some other point. Let me ask you a question. Were you a cheerleader at Weequahic when you were there?
I was a color guard.
Okay.
Not a cheerleader. We had cheerleaders, but I was in the front of the band and we carried the big banner.
Yes, ma'am.
Big. There were like 4 of us that needed it. Or we carried the flag in a holster.
Yes, ma'am.
Not a little flag. I'm talking about a 6-foot flag.
Yeah. I mean, because I still think to this day, Weequahic, you all got one of the best bands ever, right? Wherever them kids play, I mean, them kids are phenomenal, and them girls are awesome. I mean, you talk about the attitudes these little young ladies have is amazing. That's why I asked you, were you one of them cheerleaders?
No, color guard.
Yeah.
We had a really good band leader at that time, Mr. Ross. He actually had us doing formations on the field.
Right.
So we were the first school in Newark to actually do a formation on the field. So at halftime, our W became very popular.
Well, I appreciate hearing all of this stuff. About the Weequahic section, about Weequahic High School. I mean, one of me and Zaid's best friends is a teacher. Been over there now for going.
One of the co-founders of the show.
Yep, one of the
Mr.
co-founders.
Yele.
Been there for almost 20 years. So
Better than 20 years now. Yeah.
and educated a lot of children in there. This was during Mayor Baraka's time as the principal and vice principal. And but we want to thank you very much, Ms. Lawson, for coming through. We
Are
appreciate
there
you.
any other takeaways that you want us to know about the scholarship program? That's because that's the main. That's what brought
Our
you.
scholarship program, yes, we need money. So if you know anybody that would like to donate to us, they can get in touch with me at the Weequahic Alumni at gmail.com.
Okay.
We always need money.
Okay.
We're having a scholarship fundraiser on April 16th.
That's what we wanted to get at.
On April 16th, and the information is on our Facebook page and on the school's Facebook and Instagram page because they're helping us promote it. So
April 16th, where's this going to be?
It's going to be at Galloping Hill Inn in Union, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And our guest speaker is a 67 graduate named Dr. Ken Dykewald. He has his own company called Age Wave, and he does a lot of work on aging in society. He's a well-known speaker. He's an author, and we are looking forward to having him address our group. We will also have a couple of scholarship students there speaking about their experience and the help that they've received from us. And we hope that, you're able to join us. We'll have some entertainment and it'll just be a lively night.
Well, April 16th. And
yes.
We would, we'll look to try to locate that flyer and we'll definitely post it on our IG and Instagram page and Facebook page. And, we'll try to let as many people know about the April 16th. And if we can make it, we'll try to see if we can purchase some tickets.
Yeah, it's there. I just found it.
You did?
I just found it. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Well, if you give Asia your contact, I can, your email address, I can get you the flyer.
Okay. Well, Zaid said he just found it.
I'm on the Facebook page right now. I'll have.
Thank you.
Now, you want to ask her the ritual question, Ed?
Yeah. Well, you go ahead, Zaid.
All
these questions all night.
The program doesn't actually start until 6 o'clock. Is that correct?
You're on the air. We've been talking. Yeah. We've been on the air.
Oh, that's what I thought. Because Asia is telling me that I'm on at 7:45, and I'm like, okay, when is
that's what Asia told you?
Okay.
We'll talk. We'll have a talk with that young lady, as we used to say.
Oh, okay. I don't. Is she on?
No, Asia's not on. She said you were supposed to wait. Let me see something. Zaid, was that scheduled?
No, she got some got mixed up with Jonathan some kind of way. The run of the show clearly has Myra and Asia for 6:30.
Oh, that's what I thought. And I called in a little early because I wanted to make sure I could connect.
Right, so you did all the right things.
Okay. All right.
No, well, Zaid, I'm looking at, unless Jonathan changes around, because I do see
changes stuff around.
7:45. I do see Myra Lawson on at 6:30, 7:45. At 6:30, I see Jonathan had it was supposed to be a Trump-Epstein conversation.
Yeah, he's not here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you just switched to, okay, I got it now. So
but I don't think anybody
continue speaking to me. I'm happy to do so.
But I don't think anybody told Asia. If Asian texted you and told you 7:45, she must don't know. Right?
Yeah, she's texting. We're going back and forth right now. That's why I keep looking down. She says she'll be on in 40 minutes.
Tell Asia we took care of you.
I'm sorry.
Tell Asia we took care of you.
Okay. All right.
All right. Ms. Lawson, we'll definitely post that flyer. And as I say, we'll talk to Asian if we need to reschedule with you on her, we'll do that.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate this opportunity. I really do. You have absolutely no idea. I am retiring, just so you know, in April after this event is over. And my replacement is actually a Weequahic alumnus. He graduated from Weequahic in 2019, and the year before last, he graduated from NJIT.
Oh,
And we're very, very happy to have him. His name is Emmanuel Agbanaya. So, we'll be putting out a notice pretty soon to introduce him formally to the community. But my hope is that everyone will continue to support us through him. He's very, very dynamic, smart, and passionate about Weequahic High School.
That's incredible. That's incredible. In fact, we'll have him here.
Oh, okay.
Have him here. Absolutely, we'd love
Yes,
to have him.
we would love for you to interview him because he's the face of the Alumni Association going forward. He's going to bring in a lot more young people and a lot more energy.
so Ms. Lawson, let me ask you this question. We are a political hip hop radio talk show.
Yes, I know.
Do you listen to hip hop music? And if so, what is your favorite hip hop artist or record?
Well, actually, I'm not real big on hip hop because I'm an R&B person.
Okay.
You got to remember when I grew up, I grew up in the Motown area, in the Philly area, in the Stax area. So those are like my people. Although I do listen to all kinds of music. So I don't really have a favorite hip hop artist because I don't really know how to define a hip hop artist.
Okay.
But I like a lot of different genres of music.
Well,
I'm on the soul front. Who your favorite soul group?
My favorite soul group has got to be the Temptations.
okay.
Got to be the Temptations.
I like the Temptations now, but I think the OJs will get them a run for their money.
Well, I love the OJs too. Don't get me wrong. I got like 10 favorites, but if you ask me for one, it's going to be the Temptations.
All right.
Well, I tell you this, Ms. Lawson, give me your top 5.
My top 5
Yes.
groups or singers.
So either or, top 5.
Okay, Luther. Okay, Luther, Teddy. Okay, the Temptations. The Whispers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, gotta have the Whispers.
Yes.
Okay, and Stephanie Mills.
And Stephanie Mills.
And of course Aretha and Whitney. I mean, I could keep going.
In your top 5, I see that. You know, we just lost Scotty, one of the.
Yes, I do know. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, and they have a long history of some great concerts right there at Symphony Hall.
Yeah. Yes.
We love the Whispers in Newark.
Oh,
just like they were from California, but I got to tell you, when I was a kid, I thought they was from Newark.
Yeah, because they played here so much, right?
That's right. They played here so much.
Right.
Yes, and I had a chance to see them a couple of times. They're wonderful.
Oh yeah, it was incredible. Yeah, I saw them the last time they were here at the New Jersey Pack. Both of the brothers.
Yes.
See them.
I was at that show. I didn't see you.
Oh yeah. I was there. I got pictures to prove it.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
And I even recorded a couple of the songs live so people could see it because I was so impressed that even though they're in their 80s, their voices are still immaculate. I mean, they can still sing them songs.
Exactly.
So I agree with you. Those are one of my favorite groups. But I got to say the OJs are my top group. And if I had to pick the top 5,
okay.
I lived in Philadelphia for a while.
Oh, okay.
I had the privilege of being able to go over to Philadelphia International Records and sit there and watch them record some of them songs with with Kenny Gamble and Leon.
Oh God, that had to be special.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, you got to. I mean, I'm telling you. I mean, I knew some of the writers, who wrote them songs, and so and I was young, so I had an opportunity to be able to go there and sit in. I mean, unfortunately, they tore. My wife and I were down there a couple of months ago, and unfortunately, they tore the Philadelphia International Records down. That building no longer exists. Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, it's no longer there.
God.
But I can remember those rooms that they would be in rehearsing, and they would go and sit down with Leon and Kenny, and he would play the pianos, and them guys would sing. Oh my God. I remember Patti LaBelle. I remember being in there with all of them people. And
I'm class of 79. Our theme song was Ain't No Stopping Us Now.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
Right.
Whitehead.
I was taken with the Delphonics,
Yeah,
the stylistics,
yes.
that ballad soul. That was my stuff. Oh my
all
God.
them cats came through there. All them cats, man.
My
It was called the
Weequahic,
Sound of Philadelphia.
Yes, sir.
my Weequahic class of 1970 uses that song as our theme song, and we just had our 50th reunion this past November,
Wow.
and we had almost 100 people show up from 1970.
I
It was
know that was
amazing.
amazing. I
It
know.
was amazing.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And only one person came in with a cane.
Wow. Well, good for y'all.
Yes, the dance floor was lit all night.
Nobody, hey, Miss Lawson, nobody looked like what they've been through. You know what I mean?
No, 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 no. No, they
If
don't.
they did, they wasn't bringing a cane that night.
Exactly.
They wanted to show what they was working with. You know.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I want to tell you, it's been a pleasure talking to you. We thank
Why,
you so
thank
much.
you. I just texted Asia to let her know that you've interviewed me, and I'll let her know more after I get off the phone. I don't want to keep, looking down while I'm talking to you. So thank you again for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope the
Welcome to
rest
come
of
back
your
anytime, man.
evening
Welcome
goes
to come back
well.
anytime. Good to see you.
Yes, thank you very much. So
Thank
I'm
you
going to
so much.
sign off.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Weak way.
It's amazing, man. I enjoyed
Weak
that.
way.
So, Zaida, I don't know. I mean, I hope we're putting everybody in their right slot now, because
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Now here we go. We get ready for this next round, right? In case he's trying to get himself. Come on, camera, Casey, and come off mute. All right. Unless he's driving. There
What's
you
up,
go.
brother? Peace, peace, fellas.
There we go. There we go. The Patterson Healing Collective has come.
Yes, indeed.
Dr. Lisa's good to have you back. Councilman Melvin,
Yes, sir.
good to have you back.
Great to be back. Great to be back.
Now we've got something coming up. And Lisa just lost it. She just lost her stuff. Oh, God, what did happen to her? I'm ready to ask the question.
She probably multitasking. She's a
Yes.
early
I told
mother.
her to bring Legend with her. This is community.
Okay, that should make it easy.
So she's having some connection issues. But ladies, I in our preliminary conversation, everybody, Ed and I were talking, and I shared with Ed that we were going to have the Patterson Healing Collective on, and that they were doing some amazing work in the city of Patterson, like unto our own Newark Community Street Team, and quite a model formation in this work that we call community-based violence intervention. But on March 31st, they are going to host a one-day symposium that will lift up 5 years, and it's hard to believe it's been 5 years already, 5 years of the work of the Patterson Healing Collective, right? And I have two of their leaders, both cherished in the community for obvious reasons and good reasons, right, who are here to tell us about the great walk that they have taken over that 5 years. I'm going to go with ladies first, Mr. Melvin, right, and bring your our ED on, and let her tell us about this symposium. What's happening on March 31st, Dr. Lisa? How are you?
I'm good. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for getting us on the show so we could talk about this very important day. So we're having a symposium, because many times our work often is told in that research form where we're not often a part of that conversation. So the team has been speaking about, hey, doc, like we got to do a conference. They got to know what we do. So I was like, all right, let me see what I can, let's see what we can make happen. And luckily we have an amazing colleague. I have an amazing colleague at Montclair University University. His name is Dr. Williams. And they have an amazing staff out there. Brian Murdoch and Iris, they are in the Community Affairs Division, I believe, in Montclair. And they were all for it. Like they wanted to, showcase our work, use their university as a platform for us to share the research, share our impact. And then not even just that, but just making sure that the students there, the greater community, any policymakers, anybody that's involved with this work has a space to come to learn about what Patterson Healing Collective has been doing for the last 5 years. And on that day, I don't know if you guys saw the flyers, but I got some powerhouses. We have some amazing folks. First of all, our team.
Slow down.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Slow down. I want you to walk backwards a little bit.
Okay.
What was happening in Patterson 5 years ago, and what drew the two of you to the work?
Oh, so first, I'm so glad that Casey was able to join because I don't know if you guys have ever heard about Casey Melvin, but in Patterson, Casey Melvin is the unofficial mayor. I've known Casey since 2015, 2016. And the remarkable work him, Rashawn, Juan, and so many others were doing, their leadership, their selflessness, right? They were doing this stuff before it was a ecosystem of, investment towards violence intervention work. They were doing it because they just they didn't want to see people die anymore. So I'm gonna let KC share that part because KC to me is a historical figure. Not KC, I'm not trying to date you. KC's birthday was 2 days ago, but KC to me is one of those people in Patterson that should be down in the history books for his his dedication to his people. And I don't know if y'all know this, and this is not my PHC hat. This is just Liza hat talking about my brother. He's gonna be running for council this year. So just look out for him and support him. And I'll pass it over to KC.
Yeah, we spotlighted him on his council run.
Yes, sir. And I definitely appreciate that spotlight, Barbara. So like Doc was saying, we were kind of 5 years prior to the Healing Collective. Myself, Rashawn Dixon, Quan Hargrove, and a few other people were out here in the community in the city of Patterson addressing the violence issue. Myself, I've always been community involved with the city of Patterson, trying to provide services for the underserved community for about 30 years now, And when Rashawn Dixon came home about 15 years ago from a 12-year sentence in prison, he had an epiphany to come out in the community and prevent young people from going back in prison. Because while he was there, he seen people like in the teenage years coming in prison for under under charges like homicide and murder and things like that. And, he made a commitment to those who are inside that once he comes out, he'd do his part to prevent individuals from going back. And he had recruited me, into the fold of anti-violence and activism related to, the shootings and the killings that were going on. Because prior to the Healing
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. Prior to the Healing Collective, Doc could tell you, because she would, she always had her ears to the street. She was working in probation, and she's seen, the evolution of Patterson when the gangs hit the city, and how numbers of homicides started going in the double digits. Every year we could experience 24 to 30 homicides, not including just general shootings. And myself, Rashawn Dixon, and a group of us would go out there, hold rallies, talk to these young guys, get them together. In 2015, we were successful with establishing a truce for the city. That was 2015. 11 years ago. Unfortunately, no resources, and based on it not being resources, because we were creative enough and we were fortunate enough to get the guys to stop the violence. And I mean, this had never happened throughout the history of Patterson, where what they call up the hill, which is like the east side of town, had made peace with the west side of town, and or the separation was just a bridge. We got them to stop the violence and stop killing and shooting each other for 90 days. We held them and the city was peaceful. But as you all know, without resources, guess what? Everything reverts back to what it was. And that's what happened. Fortunately, Dr. Chowdhury, with her scholarship and her resources and her magical pen, she put together the magical proposal that brought the Healing Collective together. And not only are we better equipped to not only establish violence, but to employ those who are closer to the problem to be part of the solution and offer some solid services as it relates to mental health, employment, food security, transportation, the whole gamut, everything that kind of had them in a situation where they were. We now have an institution in place, a system in place, a program in place that, establishes that baseline and continues the peace. So, hats off to the Healing Collective. And I'm glad she recruited me into the fold because, the last part I got to say, and it's very important, when you broke, you everybody's serving. Everybody wants you, right? For free, of course. But then when the money comes in, then they start to recruit a whole new team. That wasn't the case with her. She looked at the same people who were doing the work prior to the Healing Collective, and she brought them into the fold. And that's another reason why I'm with the program.
I was really taken with what you said about Rashawn being the one that brought you, because you have your own presence that even predates that in the town that's very typical of the stable
I
black.
can't hear you, Baba.
You change your browser. Right? Just go out and change your browser. Right? She can't. Yeah. Casey, can you hear me?
Yeah, very clearly. Yes, I can
Okay,
hear you very clearly. Yes.
I'm gonna text her in a minute. She needs to change her browser probably. So for some reason she's having an issue. But Casey represented that old school black space of stability, and it still exists in our community, but not quite as it did over the years as a black barber, right? And that barbershop space being that space where all the brothers would come in, they would just get their head buzzed, but they would unpack all their stuff, right? And a good barber would also understand that his space is a space for community to get direction, right? So, you come from that space too, right? And that's a very
Absolutely.
organic space in black communities all over the country. So I just wanted to put a pin in that and lift up Rashawn for having that kind of embracing presence, coming back home after doing a bid like that, right?
Yes.
Because that's what transformation looks like. And that's what we want to get all our folks to do. Lisa, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm so sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on with my phone.
No, it's all right. It's all right. These things happen. There ain't nothing perfect in this world, and ain't none of us perfect. And this technology sure ain't perfect, right? Now, Casey, we brought Casey, but you got this. You have all of these credentials, and come from these places where we wind up not doing this kind of thing, right? But and one of the problems that we've had in our communities, we get experts that want to call themselves experts about us, but are not with us. You're cut from a very different stripe. You are very much with your community. What made it so for you to develop your own organic presence in this community and ultimately doing this work?
Well, I'm from Passaic, so like Passaic is like the cousin of Patterson, right? So a lot of my childhood,
Yeah,
yeah, a lot of my childhood and like just growing up is not like, and Patterson has one of the largest Bangladeshi populations in the country, and I happen to be from Bangladesh, so Patterson is like a second home to me. And then when I got out of college, I knew that I wanted to do something to better my community, and that just ended up being working with young people that were just as involved. And I was a juvenile probation officer in Patterson for about 10 years, and I just it didn't feel good being a part of a system that I felt like young people were just like being cycled through, right? It was like a never ending cycle. I felt like sometimes frustrated that some of the reasons why they were even engaging in some of the decisions that they were making is because of poverty and because of the lack of resources. And I kind of set a pledge to myself that I'm gonna figure this out somehow, some way, and see how we get money to help these young people, so that they don't have to make the decisions that they made. So it was very important for me, like once I got my PhD and learned how to do all that grant writing, proposals, research, all the stuff that they talk about that you need to make something, a program sustainable, to make sure that I brought it back to Patterson, and give opportunities to some of the young people that I honestly, I grew to love from working with them for so long. And you'll see some of our team members on that day, on the 31st. Maybe I'm biased, but I definitely handpicked them because I already knew their potential when they were young people. It was just a matter of giving them an opportunity, and to see their growth in the last 5 years, to see them, when you guys will see them on a panel, them speaking from the heart. And when I say these young people, some of them were victimized while the program started, right? Like that's how we even got them back in the program, because they were, one of the survivors from the hospital. And, when we arrived at that bedside, they could have made a decision to go back and retaliate, but they didn't. They decided to be on the side of peace with us. And they've been riding it out for the last 5 years, so much so that we got the Giffords inaugural award for being Lifesavers of the Year. And that's a national award. One of our high-risk interventionists, one of the youngest ones on the team, he got an award from the Health Alliance of Violence Intervention, aka the HAVI, as a frontline worker. And that's just, in the inception of our program early on. So I just, I'm very proud of this team. And, sometimes, actually not sometimes, often, we're always told like, hey, what do you, how do you have data? How do we know that what you're doing is really what's getting the violence down? So this is now our opportunity to tell our own story, because yes, we could go get researchers that, come and do a study on us. That could happen. But, I feel like I don't think we need another person to validate our truth, right? We have the data. We've helped over 500 victims of violence. That's a lot of data, a lot of lives that we've worked with. And, we have those stories. We have the people that have been involved with our program that'll come and tell you all the things that we did. And I think that it's time for us, those that do this type of work, and those that are on the front line, to tell their own. They're the experts, right? And not to be isolated and say, hey, they can't tell their own story, or they can't relinquish their own data to talk about how effective they are. So what got me into this is that I've always said my parents are from Bangladesh. Like I said, they lived through genocide. My father was my father was in the freedom fighting. He always made me very proud of the fact that the part of Bangladesh we're from, which is Chittagong, were one of the first areas that fought against colonization. So I just I think I have that spirit in me of making sure that we always whatever platform I have, I bring other people with me, not leave them behind. So that's what we're doing. We're all a team. I always say that just because I'm an ED and I have a PhD behind me, that's not what makes me an expert. What makes me good at what I do is the relationships I build. And that's the same thing why my team is so good, because we build really meaningful and sincere relationships. We really care about the folks that we work with.
Huge, 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 huge. So and I want to acknowledge Madam Councilwoman Donna Williams joining us, one of our regular co-hosts, and our elected activists in our midst. But I want everybody to appreciate what you've done and the context in which you do it. This is tough work, and we talk about high risk intervention. It's dangerous work, right? And sometimes certain forces that appreciate it of certain institutional character, and I'm talking about elected officials and law enforcement, right? And Patterson is going through some crazy stuff with law enforcement. The state had to take over the Patterson police just a little while ago. How were you able to do as well as you've done, given the context, that I just described? Not to mention now we got a new national context with the advent of the return of Donald Trump, it's a flip side from the contributions of the Biden administration. For all of its limitations, the Biden administration invested heavily in this work through the Justice Department Trump turned the Justice Department on his head completely, and the Justice Department is now creating harm where it had the historical responsibility of being a place to undo harm, right? In a context like that, what kept y'all going? How y'all keep on keeping on the way you've done? And y'all could both answer, y'all.
I think that, I think we have the universe behind us. I'm a spiritual person, and I just feel like we have the spirit of our ancestor now, Najee, that always backs us, and then we have so many young people that depend on us. Like, we can't just fold. And I think I have a team that and Baba, you're in that office with us. Like, my team is like dope. I put them against any team all over the country. Like, this is not work for us, right? This is something that we really sincerely care about. So, I feel like, yes, we had impossible circumstances, and yes, we could have fallen apart. But I think that we proved to those that depend on us that even when you go through the hardest times, in the world, and we have a responsibility to try to heal ourselves and still show up for each other, because we're all we got, right? Like, at the end of the day, nobody's going to come and save us. And I think we've all realized that we are really that institution in the community that shows up and will listen to people and not judge them and not harm them, and we will do whatever we can to try to find resources and support them in one of the toughest times they have. I mean, we even, like, when we were going through our traumatic experiences, we were still, arriving at the bedside of folks that have gotten shot. And we still did the case management. We still made sure that we were planning funerals. We still made sure that people were getting counseling. We couldn't stop that, right? Because at what cost? Like, having more people, be harmed. So I think that, I think that kind of proves to why we're doing this, right? After 5 years, we got to tell our own story. Like, we've been in the most, I think we've had a lot going on, and we showed that we can prove, like, hey, we persevered, and we're here to stay, and we're going to continue to do the work, and we're going to grow, and we're going to, change this whole crisis response, how it looks in our communities, Black and Brown communities, and, immigrant communities, because we need something different.
Now, you mentioned the ancestor Najee breakdown for us. Y'all relationship with the late Najee Seabrooks, just to remind everybody who Najee was and what he meant to you, what he means to you.
I'll start in the K if you want to fill in and add to that answer too. Because I just want to share that, like, in my team, they went through the most traumatic experience, because they were actually there when all this happened. And Najee, I've known Najee since he was 16 years old, and Najee was also a survivor in our program. He was shot in March of 2021, and I had arrived at the bedside with our colleague, Mr. Hargrove, and because Najee saw both of us, he just, automatically I remember he cried a sigh of relief because he saw us, because at that time, he was not, obviously, he almost, he went through a life or death experience, and here we showed up and we gave him that, that familiarity, and he's very close with Mr. Hargrove. And then we never let go of him since then. Like, we, I knew Najee, and I knew how, his heart. And I was like, hey, Najee, when you're ready to join the team, join the team. And he did. He eventually joined the team, and he was definitely a neighborhood hero. He definitely cares so much. Najee will take the shirt off his back and give it to the next person. And I think that one of the things that Najee used to push me to do is work more on preventative, like working with youth that didn't get shot. And he would always be like, why are we waiting until they get shot? We got to go do more stuff, before they get to that point. And it was almost like as soon as it was crazy, because as soon as what happened to him, our office all of a sudden was filled with youth out of nowhere. And Casey could attest to that. They just showed up. And I was like, where did all these kids come from? It was almost like his spirit was like, aha, I told you we're going to have to work with kids. And now, ever since then, we have, like, all the youth from the first, fourth, fifth, they love our program. And I wish we had a bigger building so we could bring everybody in there, but we don't yet, But that was his spirit guiding us, that, like I said, everything that we've done is organic. And I want to share that story. This wasn't like this, textbook answer. It was literally people that cared about their community, care about people coming together, like-minded people that put aside their egos and said, let's make this work because we don't want to see young people die anymore.
Najee Seabrooks lost in March 3rd, 2023 in a mental health crisis. His team members from the Patterson Healing Collective were on the scene, and the police who were on the scene refused to allow them to help their brother and their comrade, and we lost Najee, and we shouldn't have. I just wanted everybody to be clear on who we're talking about. Now let's unpack just very briefly in the few minutes that we have left what are going to be some of the highlights of the symposium. Who's coming?
I know Zaid, was Casey gonna say something about Najee as well?
Casey can say anything he wants. He know that.
I know, because he said he was gonna I just didn't want to make sure we didn't miss that opportunity.
Oh, we ain't missed nothing. He know what to do here.
I appreciate that. Dr. Chowdhury, you did cover the majority of it, but the part when she said like a large member of the staff was there, like I was one of the staff members that happened to be there when that incident unfolded, and you said something earlier about the team, the challenges of the Trump administration, and then that, and then the challenge also our comrade, like that pretty much, right, like my face kind of broke. Like,
starting to break up. Is he breaking up, or is that on my end?
No, that's probably because you're moving, Casey. You better pull over. You got something. We got to hear what you got to say.
Okay. Can you hear me better?
Yeah, that's a little better.
So, I was saying the part that kind of broke me in culmination with the systematic challenges of the changing of the administration, and then just dealing with the violence intervention and prevention already is taxing, but for us to lose our brother, at that time kind of broke me to the point where like I was like just totally, my mind was erased as far as next, because for him to lose his life, and as I was saying, my last text message from him was, bro, come down here. I'm not trying to let them kill me, right? As if he knew, he had a feeling that something wasn't going to go right. And I'm rushing. He's guiding me to where he is. And when I get there, trying to enter the building where he was, because he called me directly, right? The law enforcement said, no, you can't come down here. You can't enter. And I'm like, what do you mean? He called me, I got the message on my phone, and I want to go talk to him to try to bring him out of that situation. But he denied me. Not only denied me, our other colleagues who he communicated with. And then, and then the type of support was called to the situation, even, kind of messed me up even more. They sent a SWAT team for a mental health crisis, So when you look at all of that, and then the result of that is, him losing his life was very, very dramatic. But as Doc said, we got a strong team and we do the work, but you never think that the people who do the work have to apply the work to themselves, right? And that's where my comrades came in. You guys came, and you drove in and you gave us support, and I thank you if I never did before. Thank you for that, because that was very rough. But she said, Liza said how magnificent the team is. I couldn't concur with her, greater. It's 100% right with that. And had it not been for them, my colleagues, for the team, for the support for you guys, Salvation Social Justice, Equal Justice USA, the whole gamut of people who do the work and understand the work, providing that support, we wouldn't be where we are today. So again, I want to thank you all for that.
And we came to you because, not just because it was a matter of principle, because of the character that all of you share in what you do and how you do it. I'm gonna be very upfront about that. And I know we're supposed to be quote objective in media circles, but this is community radio, so we're gonna put it on you, right? So now let's come back to this, the unpacking of the day. If I got somebody coming from the hood to the one-day symposium, and I got some folks, I got some social justice veterans come in and don't none of them understand what we're talking about when we're talking about community-based violence intervention and hospital-based. They don't know what the heck that is, and y'all make. We know y'all trying to do something. Y'all got programs, but just what am I going to learn at this here symposium if I'm coming to it?
I think you're gonna learn that from the first panel to the last, like we're gonna show almost like how did we start and how did we get to where we're at right now, right? We're a nonprofit that is managing, millions of dollars in federal and state funding. And some people would have thought that that's impossible, right? That how is a small, how do these folks, how are they getting this money? And, we want to talk about the advocacy we did. We want to talk about, right, it started with KC and Ra and Hargrove and Dell. They're unfortunately, some of the losses that they face, all the trauma they face, including me too, some of the young people that I work with, and how we all came together and said, hey, you know what, we don't want this to happen anymore. And then came the goodwill of the hospital, right? An institution that had enough courage to say, you know what, we're willing to fiscally sponsor this program. It means a lot to us too, to stop seeing young people continue to come into our emergency room with these injuries, right? And then having Dr. Pruden and Ken, and then taking care of the next generation with our first HRIs, Najee, Isaiah, Javis. Where Javis and Isaiah, when they first started this program, their neighborhoods were literally shooting each other every week. And now they're coming together. We did a restorative circle. Everything that people talk about in the textbooks, we did that. And we want to show in real life, this is what it looks like. This is how beautiful, the work can be if it's invested in. And then you're going to hear the second panel. It's going to be about research and data, because oftentimes they always tell us that we don't capture data. And we're going to show you that these 5 years, yes, we did capture data. And look at what our data is saying. We're saving money. We have dropped the violence. It's not just the police that have done it, because we could prove it to you. All the community walks we did in the 1st, 4th, 5th ward have a lot to do with why the violence has stopped. All the, retaliations we stopped, because every time we arrive at that bedside and provide case management has helped to stop some of those, ongoing spurts of violence. And then we're going to hear from, E's going to be moderating a panel with, advocates and legislators. We got the great.
He is the great Elizabeth Rudman.
Yeah. We have, we're very lucky to have, Assemblywoman Shavonda Sumter. We have Reform, Mike Winans that's going to be there. We're going to have Steve Campos from Viva. We have Will Simpson, representing, philanthropy. And, we have our own Adam Garastegui, who's going to talk about some of the barriers we face, right, with grant funding and all that kind of stuff, and how we can make this better. We also have some other folks that I don't remember. We have so many great people. I'm going to be honest. I can't remember everybody that we have on that panel. But but going from advocacy, how do we even get this money, and how do we make sure that this money really pools to these programs? Like how does it get to a KC, Ra, and Hargrove? Let them do their work, right? So that and let's make sure that money gets to them, so that they're not sitting here trying to figure out how to keep a 9 to 5 and save lives, right? How do we make sure that community is resourced properly, and they're not just coming out of their pocket all the time? Every time a young person needs something, that they're well resourced, and they're able to pay people a living wage and provide insurance and mental health wellness services and all that kind of stuff. And then we have another panel about training. Ray Chavez, Brother Dame, but basically the best of the best in New Jersey, right? And around the country are all going to be on this panel. We got, Dennis Febo from Jersey City. We have, and of course our team, and we have mental health. We have the head of the mental health department at St. Joe's. We have the mental health alliance of Passaic County. We have the ED from there, because they all support our work, and they know how important this is. And we have Felicia from CSG, which is a national organization that works on crisis intervention team. So we're going to talk about all that. We have Brother Zelly Thomas from Patterson. He's going to talk about the harm reduction work they do, the data with that. And then finally, we're going to launch out, how, what we just talked about, that tragedy that we had. Many teams, like you said, could have folded, but we used that ammunition, and we wanted to make sure that Najee's name never got buried, right? That they weren't going to just put out a mugshot of our brother, because that's not who he was, right? We want to make sure people knew that he was a healer. He didn't deserve to die that way. And we want to make sure that his name went down in history books as somebody that deserved, a culturally responsive, sensitive, empathetic system that came to, not a SWAT team. So we were able to, his family, KC, Hargrove, and all the activists around the country. We work with Salvation and Social Justice. They actually initiated the law. And then we, when Najee died and when Andrew Seabrooks passed away, tragically, the way they did, they got killed, right? So we were able to utilize, the direction that Salvation and Social Justice already had with their policy, and now, use make sure that Najee's name never went away by attaching his name to the bill. And we want to make sure that people understand that crisis response, what it looks like when it's a community-based response. Because that day, had this bill been in effect, when KC arrived to that building, the police would have been required to utilize all resources before they brought in the SWAT team, right? And we want to make sure that this never happens again, that our teams, all of our CVI organizations are considered first responders, that they can't just be shooed away, or be seen as not credible enough or not trained enough, or no data backs them. We want to show on that day, on the 31st, that, we are credible and we are the best people to do this in the community.
Liza, I'm sure you heard by now, Mayor Mondani appointed assist as deputy mayor for community service. And when we were all talking about defund the police, we weren't saying defund, we were saying bifurcate some of that money and put it into exactly what you're talking about. And had that program been up and running, that you would have been a part of any response team for something like that happens. I asked that question, well, one, to highlight that it is being done, that a lot of communities work for, but are all of these, like the New Yorks, the Newarks, because you're all doing this work and doing a great job at doing the work, are y'all taking some time to talk to yourself to figure out how y'all can better utilize each other, utilize the resources, and make sure that we continue to grow? Because we know that this is a great program, and how do we continue to grow it and make sure more communities who don't know about it or help, maybe reaching out to you guys as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And KC could tell you, we've had the best of the best around the country come and train us. We've learned from them, like when you talk about Chicago, California, New York, learning from their systems, right? And then also thinking about New Jersey, to me, I feel like we're at the forefront too, and like taking the lessons we learned from New York, pieces from Chicago, pieces from California, pieces from Baltimore, and then our own New Jersey flavor, right? Like, we also have amazing programs here, right? I think that one of the things that we're learning is, like, culturally, what does it look like in New Jersey? And it's all political will too, right? It's like, how do we get these legislators to really resources? And one of the things that you're going to learn from about in the symposium is that all of our money is based on competitive grants, and that is not sustainable, right? Like, we've been doing this work for 5 years. There's no reason why we have to apply for a competitive grant and then say next year we don't get the funding anymore because somebody has a better grant writer. For example, that happened to us last year. We had a VOCA grant for 4 years, and this year they didn't give it to us anymore because they said that we didn't score high enough. So we want to change that. And that's a part of why we're having this symposium. Like, the way that the funding is being rolled out, we're not being resourced properly, and we're not being given the real support to sustain us, right? And even the money is not being reimbursed right away. A lot of us are coming out of our own, like, taking loans. We shouldn't be, doing all that, right? Because this work is important.
That's right. Well, I'm glad I asked that, and we need to know if it's as simple as having a lobby day so that we can make sure that you're funded properly and that you're part of the budget and not an afterthought as well. So.
Yeah, anything you guys can do, right? I look to all of y'all because we need your support, because our team is doing the work too, right? Like, so they're tired. We need other people to speak out for us. And, we got to get people like KC Melvin elected, right? Folks that are from that actually care. And this is once again not my PhD hat. This is Liza Chowdhury speaking, just as somebody that loves the community. We need to elect people that really know this work and care about this work and will resource this work.
You're absolutely right, and people who can go up there and not and who could fight for you as a legislator and not, always coming from behind. So you're absolutely right.
And this is the whole point of the thing. I want y'all to make this point as we go. We are ultimately talking about doing this in other sister programs like yours, doing this in our fight for sustainability,
Right.
And giving the fact that, yes, we are first responders, right? We are doing high risk work that requires the highest professional standards in training, just like the typical arms of public safety, that is like law enforcement and fire, all of that, right? The questions that we are grappling with is, how do we get the sustainable support from all those spaces wherein we function like those other elements do? That's really where we're trying to go. I just want y'all to put a pin in that, because folks need to appreciate that's what our struggle is for right now, for sustainability.
Well, Liza and Casey, we're gonna have to get back to you before we when we get the dates for the New Jersey Lobby Day, so we can all meet in Trenton. But as we begin to move to our next segment, Liza, I know you've been here before. I'm not sure if Casey has, but would you say, Zay?
Both been here before.
Okay, sorry about that, Casey. But what I want to ask, when you're doing the work and as you prepare for March 31st, is there a hip hop individual or group that you listen to that keeps you inspired?
Okay, you want to go first?
Yeah, so hip hop is my inspiration. I like all hip hop, right? Those who
Up again.
my thing, but I listen to Public Enemy, Dead Fresh, everything related to activism. I listen to my son, General Master Lennon, who talk about Mandani's appointment. He also appointed my son. I like his style.
My son. Okay.
My son is regular here.
Yeah, doing that work in New York, getting blasted. And Liza?
I'm a big Pac fan. Growing up, him. I listened to Kendrick, Nas. So yeah, anything like that'll get me, keep me focused, right? On like what the meaning of community work is. I try to listen to it.
All right. I'm a shout out that y'all meant to say Fetty Wap too, because Fetty Wap been in the streets doing that work, coming from Passaic County. So, all right. Well, make sure that you guys don't be a stranger. And like we said, I know there's a New Jersey Lobby Day, so we got to find out that day. So, that you guys can be down there and we can be there with you to make sure that we stand before legislators and say, fund these programs.
Thank you. We appreciate you guys.
And the link for the program is in the chat on our YouTube page and on our Facebook page. Register for the symposium on the 31st. It's a powerful way to really learn about some really powerful peacemaking that's going on organically in our communities. This is one of our model programs that's been lifted up and honored and critically appreciated all over the country. Let's make sure we're appreciating it as we should here where they are, right? Patterson Healing Collective, 5 years in, making peace in the streets. All right, y'all. We'll see you. Give Legend some love for us, Dr. Liza, right? And we'll see you in the Mississippi Minute. She was trying to talk. She was muted. All right.
Hey, y'all.
Hello.
How y'all doing? Just to build on the previous segment. And so when making claim, well, I can't only speak from like my experience, but also when it comes down to trying to get funding for programs,
Mhm,
state level, local level, federal level, right? Um,
mhm,
And then philanthropy.
yeah,
mhm,
it's very helpful to show how not only how your program is like benefits, but also how it's more cost effective. And so the program that they got going on in Passaic County, if it if they're actually able to save the community money in other ways, then there's more of a benefit to it. So say, right, like if this program allows less spending to happen on the police level or less money being spent in other areas, if you invest in it, right, because it's being more proactive versus being reactive. And
mhm,
so making those type of claims, right? Because everyone's cause is worthy, right? But is everyone's cause cost effective? Um,
mhm.
and so making those type of arguments here and there.
And
But
and and like she said, but it's also to their point having legislators who understand, because a lot of times, sometimes legislators are so disconnected that they don't understand, and we know um, that a police officer just can't respond social service in a social service aspect like a
yeah.
social service person can. We know that,
Mhm.
and and I don't want to say some things are common sense, but some things are common. You know what I'm saying? Because the police are just not there to be social servants, and it really is conflicting, and a lot of times when you can see, well, some people are built, and sometimes because their background is there, but sometimes it's very like you go through all of this training, and police are paramilitary, so part of their training is to break them down, to build them up, to train them to respond in a certain way, and
Mhm.
that's why and then it's just conflicting. It
And
really is.
and I do know at the state has given counties grants. It's not
Mhm,
all counties have received it, but have given
mhm,
some county grants to have when a police is responding to a call.
mhm.
There is a person who does have a background in social services.
Right.
So, and they're able, well, and so when like the dispatch is being called, like what's 911, what's your emergency? And like based on the description of the caller, they'll say, okay, it's up to the dispatch to let the officers know, like, hey, maybe this isn't only a police response. Maybe we need to bring along a person from social services with us. And so it's a program that I know that the state is implementing, but it's not region is not statewide. It's only located in certain areas. And even with state support within those counties, it's still not fully funded or realized completely, but it's a beautiful way to address responses,
Let
right?
me let me unpack that for you, because what you're talking about is this. You're talking about arrive together. And that's the
Right.
program that the
Oh, period. Okay, yes. Together.
you know,
Mhm,
in this, right? Arrive Together is a program that the outgoing Attorney General touted, right? That paired a police officer with a social worker
Yeah.
or a mental health professional in certain places. The state also has a 988 call system that's a diversion for people who are facing some mental health challenges. We fought for community-led crisis response, which is the
mhm,
Washington bill that
Mm,
Murphy signed in January of 2024, and that is not being implemented.
mm,
Right? That's what we're talking about, right?
mhm.
mhm,
They're coming onto these scenes with SWAT teams and whatnot. Instead of de-escalating tensions, all of that stuff escalates tensions,
Yeah.
right.
especially in somebody's
Mhm,
crisis, right?
Yeah.
mhm,
So, that's what we're talking about. So I just want to give some clarity on that, and for the all of the touting that the outgoing attorney general did with Arrive Together, that was not even formally integrated into emergency response. It should be.
Yeah.
Right.
Crisis, every arm of crisis response should be integrated into emergency response.
Yes.
Everywhere.
I
Right?
can't tell you how many
Right? But
times I've responded. I've responded to, been there, whether it was a tragedy, meaning somebody died as a result of a gunfire or a fire, both emergency responses. And, you have the families who are distraught, you have on either side, and not to have, and you recognize it immediately. You're like, oh my gosh, we need somebody here, whether it's the pastor, the social worker, to deal with it, because I've seen people at a fire, have their loved one in the house, and the firemen are trying to put out the fire and people are running into the house. And you could, it's so obvious when that component is missing, because you have people playing 3 and 4 roles just because everybody's not at the scene. And it's very sad, and it's very harmful as well.
Yeah, and this is something these thank you, Zai, for giving verbiage, these ride-alongs. It's not only just a responsibility at the state level to fund it, but at the county level, municipal level.
Right.
See that it has to be all hands.
Just like police and fire are funded. It should be integrated into all of that. This is the public arm of public safety. That's the argument I'm trying to make.
And now we have numbers, we have statistics to say this works, and how monies are right. And I know people hate when we break things down to numbers, but when it comes down to either state budget, county budget, municipal budget, numbers get looked at completely, right?
Right, exactly.
And so now that we actually have numbers from these ride-alongs, we can prove that not only do they work, but there's a cost benefit to it, right? And so instead of throwing money at a response that only leads to something that's more damaging, right? Whether it be like filling up our prisons, whether it be damaging, ripping families apart. It's actually a long-term cost benefit to the community in many ways, whether it be economical, whether it be family, keeping families together. And so this is definitely an issue that should not only be addressed at the state level, but at every level of government.
Now, before we keep our conversation, because this is a great conversation, is your guest coming?
So my guest was here early, and my guest was hijacked by some interviewers. And she texted me, I'm on right now, and they're interviewing me right now. My guest has been hijacked.
Well, let's continue on, because Che put something. Che, you could say something later about, but Che put something in the comment about visiting Northern State, and I know Zay. I don't know because of my schedule. I don't know if you had the chance to talk about it, but there was an incident where some inmate got killed at Northern State. I don't know. Have we talked about that, Zaid? We can't hear you, Zaid.
You're on mute.
Yeah, they found him. He'd been in his cell dead for 2 days.
Yeah. So did you get a chance to talk about it?
We haven't talked about it yet.
So maybe we should plan some time to talk about that. But continuing what you were saying, Asia, in terms of taking the numbers, quantifying, and I know, Zaid, you have been along in these responding to these scenes as a part of a ride along, right, Zaid? You have been a part of them? You have not?
No, my work is in community-based violence intervention.
Okay.
Arrive Together is still police-led.
Okay.
We are an alternative to police-led operations, because police-led operations have historically lended themselves to the use of deadly force. We're trying to get them away from that.
Right. And I know you've had several. I mean, you had the situation in Fort Lee. Hey, Professor, and that as well. So I know that one, we have to talk about what happened at Northern State. But Asia, I hope you stay on, and I hope that we can have discussions where this becomes the norm and not so much an afterthought. And I'll tell you real quick, when I was still sitting in our urban areas, we have churches everywhere. And I don't know if you know, and I'm sure it's everywhere, Essex County, when there's a fire, they respond with a New Jersey Transit bus. And I'm sure it's at a cost. And I wanted to see those funds better used by activating a church near a fire scene so that the pastor can come out, whoever they sign, a deacon. So again, like I said, that when a person is responding to their loved one in a fire, that they're not trying to run in the fire, that we can get them away, that we could minister to them, help them socially, whether it's start getting them their cards from the what's the organization? I can't even think that actually gives money and everything. I can't think of the organization. The American Red Cross, when they start giving out money to people, that we can activate, and then funds can be funneled to the church and say, hey, church at the corner, such and such is activated, the masjid, whomever, but we can have them in a warm place because we know it gets cold or sometimes it's too hot, but removing them from the scene sometimes help. So I think that, and we had a whole meeting around this where we had pastors come out and talk about it, but we need to start talking about these because it makes, like you said, the numbers are there. We show that it makes sense, and we know that police are just not, they can't protect and counsel at the same time. It's hard,
and that's not what they're trained to do, right?
And that too. So, well, are you going to stay on for this next segment?
I am, although my person was hijacked. I'm still here. I'm still signed in right now.
So, you know what teamwork is. Well, Professor is here. Professor is here to talk about Cuba. I know I have a lot of questions. So go ahead, Zaid.
We're not going to just talk about Cuba. We're also going to talk about the national Conference of Black Studies, because he was just there, and that's an annual thing, and our history is under attack. And let's be clear, our history is not under attack. It's not a red state phenomenon. It's an American phenomenon. Professor Tony Menelik Vandermeer is a professor of Africana Studies at UMass Boston, and the last time I looked, that was north of the Mason-Dixon line. Right? The attack on our history is an attack on our history from the state. All right, wherever we are, and we need to understand, if we're going to honor our history, we got to defend it, right? So those are the 2 points of this particular conversation, and we may have Professor Akil Kalfani from our own Africana Studies program here at Essex County, as that program is now going into its 25th year. Right here at Essex County. So, Baba Tony, welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Good to be present.
Right, and you all hear me calling him Baba because he's a real Baba. I'm a de facto Baba, right? But he's a Baba that's done probably around 3,000 divinations, taking care of folks in our tradition in a way far beyond I can, right? And is a radical Babalawo at that. He's a radical priest, right? Very much involved in our struggle, and has been for a long time. Powerful son of Harlem, who we greatly appreciate. So you heard me, Baba Tony, leaning in on the conference. While I was at the conference, that young man I just named, Professor Kalfani, texted me this pic of the two of y'all together, and of course you were repping for Asada with your gear. I said, oh, yeah, we got to put this right back out. Yeah.
You was at the conference? You were sad there or something?
No, he was.
Oh, I thought you said you went. Okay, yeah. I was
he sent me that picture. He took it all together.
Yes, yeah, I kill. Yeah, yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
So if you had to tell us based on what happened at the conference and Africana studies programs checking in from all over the country, what would you say is the state of Black studies now in these daunting days of the Donald?
Well, we're under serious attack, and many of the people I talk to, you can hear it in their voice, the stress and so forth, the concern that they have, and that's not to say that this is anything new. When you think about it, when Du Bois wrote "Souls of Black Folks," he talked about how he literally had to sleep in a park, right? In terms of him trying to teach our people. So when you think about where we are today, and the problems we have, it has been worse, and I believe it'll probably get worse before it gets better. But the beautiful thing is that you see so many wonderful scholars engage in a variety of different ideas, and that's very important, particularly at this time. Problem is, we're not getting any respect. They treat us like the Rodney Dangerfield of academia, right? We're not getting any respect at the not only just from the particular institutions, but in terms of whether it's the state or and as well as the nation. They value knowledge productions of African people, and so. But it is our duty, Malcolm X would say that things only get better when we make them better. It's our duty to invest more into our institutions, into our organizations, and that we have to go beyond people get into academia and their goal is to get tenure and become full professors or deans and so forth. But we have to see what role do we play intellectually in terms of providing a thrust for our people in terms of our liberation, and that's critical.
And let me ask you this: in terms of young folks, younger scholars, right? We're old enough to understand that the very idea of Africana studies was organic to our struggle, grew right out of the streets, right? And those streets impacting those universities, us getting into those universities because of the streets. And us, daring to assert our need to define our presence as we go on. And there's always been this organic relationship between Africana scholarship in our community and struggle. Are we seeing that same kind of consciousness with younger scholars?
Well, there are younger scholars coming up and they're dealing with issues, but I think that there needs to be an intensity of younger scholars in really looking at how we address our plight as a people, right? Otherwise become part of the colonial project, right? And so, yes, the question, I don't know, this is sort of like a back question you're probably trying to get to. Are we producing bourgeois scholars? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need, a more scholar activists, who are looking at the question about people? Yes. Who are looking at transformation of our people? Yes. Are we producing scholars who are looking at their own transactions? Yes. That's the contradiction, And so, but we have to address that. When you don't have a mass movement, you have this problem. And so many of us, our foray into academia came out of mass movement. And it's not to say that, we obviously we had scholars like Du Bois and Woodson and and others, so who came out, as a result of, prior struggles. But when we look at the 50s and the 60s, even the 70s, you're looking at social movements that create more contradictions. In fact, you're looking at a movement that began to put some of the D in democracy, right? Even if it's a bourgeois democracy, they put some of the D in there. And so we got a lot of gains that were won as a result of being on the shoulders of prior, scholars and activists, men and women, and so forth. So I think that our responsibility is building mass movements. Now, the thing that I would appreciate more, and this is 50 years of the National Council of Black Studies, but we got to go beyond the professionalization of this. We have to, have a, more community wing, and, because, the people are thinkers, the people make theory, people have debates, in their communities and so forth. And we need to listen to that because, in my view, the center of knowledge is in our communities, not on the university campuses.
Yes, sir.
And I was going to ask you, Professor Tony, does every generation produce or have their bourgeois, and can you look back to maybe when you were coming up that or were you maybe considered, or is there somebody who you said, oh, I misjudged them, and look at them, look where they are now?
Yeah, that's part of dialectics, yes, and yes. I think that the question, this goes back to Robert F. Williams, who said that there are three types of people. He said there are those who will go with you 100, right, and in between. And there are those who are against you, right? And those, who are in the middle. And the question is not pushing those in the middle on to the other side, right? And so there are people who will give you 10% or 20%, and we need to accept that, right? But the bottom line is that we will not be able to be a self-determining people if people aren't demonstrating the type of independence of thought and in practice, in looking at the question of sovereignty in terms of how we really stand on our feet versus we'll become, just an appendage to the existing system and structure. And so, it's not for us to be putting people down at all, it's to try to pull people in. And that's our idea, particularly if we see ourselves as revolutionary scholars, because we're trying to create a new society. But the system is very powerful, and they'll drop $1 on the ground, and a lot of people try to pick it up.
Yeah, indeed. How are things going at the school with y'all lawsuit and the struggle that you and Baba Jemadari are going through? Yeah, and the thing about it, and I want folks to appreciate this, is that not only has your program come under attack and it not being in the South, but y'all been there for decades, right?
Yeah.
Proven.
Yeah.
In the tradition, producing, right?
Yeah.
And then this attack comes. How y'all making out? How y'all making out?
It's rumble, young man, young woman, rumble. Stick and move, right? It's a fight. This is. You talked about my role as a Babalawo, but part of the cosmology, Yoruba cosmology, is that conflict is the order of the day.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's the order of the day. We can't wake up and be mad because there's a problem, right? We know it's a problem. We know it's going to continue to be a problem. The question is, what solutions are we putting on the table? Are we struggling around? So yes, the university don't appreciate us, so we shouldn't expect them to appreciate us. In fact, we raise a problem for them because we're trying to go beyond the question of white supremacy. We're trying to go beyond talking about anti-Blackness. We said, let's talk about whiteness. Let's deal with that issue, right? And white supremacy. And so, they don't want to deal with that. And in fact, some Black people don't want to deal with it. And so even our colleagues is that, our position makes them look suspect. So, they try to stay as far away from us as possible, right? But the truth of the matter don't make a difference what their position is. We know from practice, we know Dr. King, believed in, in nonviolence, and Malcolm X believed in self-defense. They killed both of them. So it don't make a difference what position you take, right? So we're rumbling at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. We filed another Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination. We have had several unfair labor practices, complaints with them, and they are increasing. And in fact, we won, unfair labor practice, from the, Massachusetts Department of Labor, and we have some hearings with the university to deal with that. But they continue to try to isolate us, create unfair, a unhealthy, hostile work environment, retaliation, all of the above, but the thing is that they don't expect us to resist. So we have to resist. And, but the part is this, is that, we got the documents and we got the receipts. And so it's just a matter of time. They try to, extend the time, try to weigh you out and so forth. But you got to be in for the long haul. And that's where we are until we die.
Yeah, I want thank you so much for coming on. This one, I went to Simmons College up in Boston, and I majored in Africana Studies there. And my advisor was Dr. Teresa Perry. So greatly appreciate her and everything that I was able to learn as an Africana Studies major. My question is, what is the students in the Africana study or in your department? How are they receiving this, and what does all this mean for them?
So before I go there, did you have Dr. Sheldon George?
Yes. Professor George, oh my word, yes, that was so. When I was at sidebar, when I was at Simmons, I was always majoring in Africana Studies, and I was toggling between majoring in or minoring in English or philosophy. And so I had Professor George for a number of classes because of his work between English and the discipline.
Right.
Oh, yes. Oh, Professor George. Yes. He's from New York. And so
You're from where?
I'm from Jersey, and he's from New York, and so it was really cool to be up in Boston with him and finding all that out. He was one of my first professors at Simmons.
Good. Yeah, he just came to our department.
Oh, I'm Facebook friends with him, so now I'm going to message him. Congratulations to him. He's amazing.
He's been very principled in terms of how we move forward. That's important. But the reality is that it was a shotgun wedding, in terms of how they folk, to us and so forth. But we appreciate, him, being very principled. I wish I can say that for everyone, but that's the reality, around that. Brother Akil, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
To your point, is that the students are involved, but you have to understand is that the students come in the spring and they come in the fall, and then they go and they come, right? And so, but it's been our relationship with students that has, sort of helped us, and particularly alumni. We have students who are alumni who are working with the Attorney General's office, they state senators, they're doing all kinds of stuff. So, and then we've had a broad up, mass movement of students, but that's why they after us too, because of those relationships, with that, but I think that the students also have to carry it and express themselves. Right now, one of the professors, a white passing professor who's been in our department, who has gone with us thick and thin, right? So they demoted him, a while ago, cut his pay. Now then they gave him a promotion, and then they, wouldn't give him continued appointment, so they fired him in the spring, right? So students are up and on. They're writing these prolific, letters in support of him and stuff like that, So, but the point is that, we need a sustained movement. We need a sustained student movement. Right. And so, but it has to be consistent. But that's the nature of what's happening with students, right? But I think based on what's going on now, what's happening in terms of the war in Iran, what's happening with Venezuela, what they're doing in Cuba, what's happening in Sudan and Haiti, that things are building up. And I think, if this things continue, there's going to be blood in the streets, and I think that'll produce, another student movement. But we got to go beyond spontaneity. We need organization and consistent organization, and so forth to do that. And, but the assault by the state has been vicious. They've destroyed our organization, they infiltrated organizations, they incarcerated people, murdered people, but this is where the bourgeois scholars coming at. They're not talking about that, in ways that they should, and it should be connected to what's happening on the ground and so forth. It goes beyond tenure. and it goes beyond, the deanships at the university. Is about what's happening to our people, what's happening in the community, what's happening in the world. And so when you raise that question, they kind of duck a little bit, and so we need some real people to stand up and sort of deal with, the kind of dangerous selflessness that Dr. King talked about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's bring Professor Calfani into the conversation. Right, sir. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
I don't know how much you've heard of, but we clearly started out talking about the National Conference of Africana Studies in its 50th year. Why don't you jump in and share your impressions, observations, and takeaways from the conference?
Yeah. I think it was a beautiful conference. And you had, once again, brothers and sisters from all over the place that were participating in it. And, and you also had handing off, right? So that the president had finished serving her term and you got a new president coming in. So I think all those things are important for the, preparing for the next group of folks. The person who's coming in is a senior scholar. However, the sister who is the executive director, Sister Dr. Fontenot, she seems to be doing a great job as well, pulling things together and making it happen. The publishers were there, so you had a good display of folks who are Black Classical Press, Sister who runs her own press, Sister Ayo Seka. She was there with her stuff and a brother out of Baltimore. I forget his name now. But they were all there. And I think that each of those pieces added something unique. And one thing I liked that I hadn't seen at conferences before is that they had a lot of youth there. By that, I mean young folks, undergrads who were presenting some paper that did a really good job. And the one sister who I was at a panel with, she's working on her doctorate. That sister is going to be a dynamite scholar. She was talking about, she put the relationship, she did this study of the relationships of some of the folks who had been enslaved in Jamaica and looked at the diary of their enslaver, a brute, horrific European man who, brutalized hundreds and hundreds of people, was notorious in his actions. And she was talking about reading through those. And what she came to the conclusion of, and I kind of talked to her, to everyone about, was that one of the things that they put forward in her thing was that her reliving the atrocities, and so she had to do her own self-care because for that, of reading, he documented the savagery of what he was doing and who he was, so telling us who they are as savage people that they have been towards Africans and others. She went through those things in detail. But what she was doing that was beautiful was she was showing the connections and relationships of Africans to each other that you would have never seen had the document not been there, but also had those Africans not in some way or another told their story that this European had written in his own thing. But this young sister, had made these connections and really put it in a kind of a spiral kind of pattern that helped us to see the power of the relationships that had to be navigated during enslavement. And so the thing that I learned from it is something we talk about and hint at, but she put the science behind it. And that was that by referring to Africans as slaves, we further dehumanize the essence of who they were as they were going through the atrocities of white supremacy and the savagery of their enslavement system. We need to humanize folks and talk about that they were in a process of being enslaved and or in the process of being the byproducts of prisoners of war, right? So these were captured folks who were imprisoned for generations, and that these stories tell the lives of those folks who were captured in that way. And I think that's a powerful thing. We've got to have more of that. And she has this whole web demonstration that's going to make it live action. Of course, her dissertation probably won't be done for another year, maybe before it comes out. But these are the kinds of things that I think we've got to tell our stories. This key that I got from there is that we've got to continue to tell our stories. If we don't tell our stories, someone else telling them, see, somebody else would have just taken his biography and just put it out there and said it is what it is without unmasking the savagery of his white supremacy and humanizing the Africans in the process. That's the work we need to do, historically and contemporarily. Right? What are some of the stories about the 60s that haven't been adequately told? What are the stories about the Africans after enslavement, like those written by W.E.B. Du Bois, that maybe still haven't been told? Right? I mentioned to her something about my great-great-great-grandmother has a story in the Federal Works Project from the 1930s, and I republished it in my book called The Hidden Debate. And what I thought, though, when I heard her story is that there's probably some connections in all those hundreds of stories from the Federal Works projects, right? These things are digitized now. They're readily available. When I was using them, they weren't, you had to look at microfilm. But these stories have some connections that we haven't found the ways that Africans navigated enslavement. And what the stories tell, and what the stories that this sister was telling, was that we have got to be the ones to find the relationships that don't only talk about the trauma. See, we fix our minds too much on trauma, and some other folks have talked about we get on trauma porn, right? We just spend so much time talking about trauma, but we don't talk about that it was battles. Right, that we got to look at these stories and talk about what was the battle that these Africans were waging in the face of the trauma. So it wasn't a one-way story, right? The European trauma is that their fear of African people, that was their trauma. And that still is their trauma, that they have a fear. That's why they go savagely towards Africans, because their trauma is their fear of the excellence, their fear of the revenge, their fear of having to give up what they've contributed to oppress us and other folks around the world. So these are the things that we've got to tell those stories. We can't just tell Tulsa, Oklahoma as there was a massacre. No, there was a battle. The brothers first went to defend the brother who was in
African blood brotherhood.
Exactly. And then after they went to defend him, they took guns with them. They were the brothers who were in the war, and they took their guns to defend him. And then after they went there, the sheriff told them, no, go home, we go take care of it. They left, came back with more guns, and they were ready to defend. But we don't tell that story. We only tell the trauma. We've got to get away from that. How do we uplift the next generation if we only focus on trauma?
And I want to try this.
And
hold on a second, Doc.
Okay.
That's a very telling community story that's hugely important to us. I have not been able to get her on this particular venue yet, but I have somebody that I work with in this larger space of community violence intervention, Dr. Tiffany Crutcher, right? And the Terrence Crutcher Foundation. This September will be the 10th anniversary of Terrence Crutcher. Terrence Crutcher was Tulsa's Hands Up, Don't Shoot 10 years ago. His sister has not only built up a nonprofit that does the stuff that you hear us and see us do in Newark around addressing violence from a community-based violence intervention lens, but she is also trying to build a reinvestment strategy to rebuild Black Wall Street. And it's just an incredible story, and it's somebody I'm very proud of. And you know, those are the stories we got to tell. The stories of our past, the resistance of our past, and the resilience of our present, standing on the shoulders of our ancestors.
Well, the question that was asked earlier, ties into with Brother Akil is raising, and so, but we need scholars who is going to, in fact, go beyond the trauma and that kind of research to begin to bring out these particular struggles and so forth. because, a lot of times folks aren't necessarily, they're writing to get, some of the scholars writing to get tenure because you got to go through the politics to deal with that. But there's stories that we need to tell, whether they want to accept it or not. I think what Brother Akil raised is that, the whole question of political prisoners, right? We got away from that language. That's who we are, and that's who we have to let our people know, that we're political prisoners, even as being enslaved, and so forth, because it has a different understanding that we are at war, and we've been at war. We continue to be at war, but they make war, something palatable. You know what I mean? They make it like you could get a couch, you get a car. You know what I'm saying? You can even they even pay you, right? And so forth. We gotta. You're right, but that'll get you thrown out the academy, right? And so forth. And this is why they're cutting back. This whole attack on Black studies and Black people. It's not Black, it's Black people. That they don't want to you to talk about what's happening. And now you got the president talking about the white people are the victims. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, and this is
there's a sister you got to have on here. There's a sister, Dr. Falou. I don't know if you know her, but Dr. Falou is working on establishing a Pan-African. In fact, she's going to be here at the African Spirituality Conference tomorrow at Essex County College. She's working on developing a Pan-African master's program and independent college in New York right now. She already owns a building, and she's looking to build it and put it there.
Wow.
What were you going to say, Asia?
Yeah, and so just like Dr. Akil, one, words matter, right? And we want to say, would it refer to like the Newark riots versus the Newark rebellion, right? A massacre versus a battle. Words really matter. And then also talking about the attack or having white people feeling victimized, right? Like the attack over critical race theory. And right, like the perception that like, oh, like if we teach true history, then we're victimizing the oppressors. And that's just, it's not true. It's history, it's factual, and we need to be honest about it so that we can heal as a nation from its original sin of slavery. But also going back to Dr. Akil, what you said again around words matter, I always took issue with referring to with the reference of free slaves, as if like slave is identity and now they're free. But like, no, whether they're free or not, they're always slaves. And it's like, no, you are dehumanizing folks because they're not slaves, they are enslaved. And so I thank you for lifting that research that was done by the young woman that you had mentioned. But words matter, and we need to be more thoughtful, intentional about how we use our words and how academics help play a part in that, or can also be not belittle, but they play a part in either moving away from certain terminology or they actually give fuel to it. And it's all interesting, but yeah, the attack on critical race theory, Nicole and Hannah Jones,
Thinking about Nicole, yeah.
and there's no such thing as an oppressor being victimized. Like that's very narcissistic, like in general, that way.
I wanted what I was going to say after Dr. Kafani. There's a Dr. Asada Richards. I believe she's at Rutgers right now, and I had put for all of us in our All Politics a local group chat. I listened to her talk about community and how she took something and teaching community and how we need to really redefine and really remember what community was to us. And she talked about things that were, and just listen to what you said, Dr. Kafani, that was, I don't know, like right out of our grandmothers and grandparents, when they would speak to us about when they were coming up and telling us their stories. And that being a younger person, I always was taught how our history was like we told each other our history. We carried these traditions through talking and telling the stories and everything. And how she told a simple story about how her grandmother, who didn't have much, how she kept a running list of everybody in her community who may have had a deceased, had somebody die in their house. They might be sick, and they delivered them a sweet potato pie, a meal or something, because that's one of the things that we did in our community, and how big that was, but how she's taking those lessons and teaching the significance of community today, and something that we really don't have. People don't, and I even heard a story today about how people don't know their neighbors. And I think there's a story from a couple of years ago where a pastor was watering his neighbor's lawn, and they called the police on him. He was literally watering his neighbor's lawn with his, from his spigot, and just watering it on a hot day. And then another person of another persuasion looked out the window and said, some black man is on somebody's lawn. And, and it was just crazy how we've moved so far from community in our own community. But it made me think of Dr. Asada Richards and what she's teaching. And I had thought about, bringing her on to talk about that, and the importance of how we tell our stories, and the very basis of how we begin to tell our stories, and remembering from whence we came. And then I also wanted to pull up Dr. Brenda Lee at Medgar Evers, who's doing the National Black Writers this week. It starts next Wednesday, and Dr. Hannah Jones is going to be one of the keynote speakers. Go ahead, that's it.
Let's transition now to this whole question of what's going on with the attacks on Cuba and Cuba's resistance and resilience. Right, the last time I went, which is just a couple of years ago, I went with this man. I went with Baba Tony, and I saw a part of Cuba that I've never been to previously. And he goes frequently, and Professor Calfani has had the honor of being able to take students from our community to Cuba, right? So we want to get y'all impressions on what's happening now. Baba Tony, you should know right before I got on, your buddy and comrade Sam Anderson was rocking on WBAI talking about this very subject. So I said we got to rock it too.
And so, yeah, Dr. Professor, tell us, when they say next is Cuba, what do they mean? Next, Cuba is next.
Well, that's part of that psychological warfare. And part of it is they're getting us to believe the propaganda that they're putting out there. Number one, Cuba is they're not going to treat Cuba like Venezuela. Cuba is, for them to put troops on the ground in Cuba would be a disaster. I mean, it's not that, Cuba has, the kind of weaponry the U.S. have, but it just would be a disaster for them to actually do that. But it speaks volumes of, the mentality of Trump, that then next we could do what we want to do with Cuba. It's like it's the imperial president, the king and so forth. So this guy's he's on crack, but the serious crack, right? As in crack in the empire as well. But, I think that Cuba is going through a very difficult moment. I mean, what's happening to Cuba is criminal, period. There was a brother on Elephant in the Room who's been monitoring our discussion, was talking about what's happening in New Jersey, how that's going to help. And that's a point. But, it's not just New Jersey, it's in Philadelphia, it's in Harlem, it's in Baltimore, it's in South Africa. It's global. It's about what's happening with humanity. It's the system that's in place that's allowing, genocide to happen in the world. and we walk over it and act like nothing is happening. I mean, it's real painful, and that's the psychological warfare. That's the disconnect that there's an actual war going on that babies can't get medicine in Cuba. The license has been off. I mean, it's desperate, but yet people. I just came back from the store. You know what I'm saying? Buying some stuff. That means because we have that kind of access to stuff, but we got to go beyond our own privileges, right? We have to deal with that dangerous selflessness that Dr. King, talked about. But the Cubans are standing up, proud, despite the dissent that they have, that the U.S. government is, has been spending money internally to spark. Right? Mm-hmm. But the Cuban people are going to stand up for their dignity. I mean, I'm in touch daily with folks, particularly in Santiago, Guantanamo, and as well as in Havana. Things are bad there, but they've been bad, right? But they've been trying to transform their situation, right? They're not like some of these folks just giving lip service and being angry about stuff. They're going to fight, right? And we need to fight. Like you got a guy here criticizing us, talking about what we should be doing. What he doing, right? What battle is he waging? What network is he trying to convince and deal with it? So we have to stand with Cuba, right? And we have to figure out ways, because when we stand with Cuba, we stand with our own humanity. That don't mean we don't deal with our struggle here. In fact, the best form of standing with Cuba is resisting the oppression that we are experiencing here as well.
Yes, sir. Building that movement like you've been talking about. Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So I think that my dear brother Vandermeer is on point. I think also that we've got to continue to internationalize our struggle, right? We sometimes we don't see the international level of the struggle, and with that particular in Cuba, I'm saying that when I was in Cuba, one of the things that we had a chance to meet with the revolutionaries in Cuba and so on and so forth. And one of the things that I said is that, look, that we want to thank you, because without their struggle, how many African countries would have never been free, right? And their sacrifices, right? They have continuously sacrificed to uplift African people around the globe ever since their liberation. And so I also say that their liberation in many ways is comparative to the liberation of Haiti. And people take that out of context because they forget that at the time of the revolution in Cuba, that it didn't just happen from a military and all that. They had the African spiritual systems in place. And even when Castro gave his speech at the end, what happened? Well, I think it was a white dove landed on his shoulder, and that had all kinds of other symbolism. And so that what I'm saying is we have to think about how we understand the struggles today, and we've got to continue to look at them in that way and internationalize them. Because the folks whom we have been up against ever since their arrival in Africa with the traversing of the Cape and the west coast of Africa by Bartholomew Diaz and all the other cronies thereafter, that all of them were engaged in spiritual warfare from day one, right? They used to go around the coast, and one of the things that they would drop off Daros, these Christian pillars that helped to signify that they were there. They were dropping off spiritual warfare is what they were dropping off. The second part of their spiritual warfare was to drop off the missionaries and building of a church. And so their spiritual warfare has been and is part of their their propaganda, part of their intellectual warfare. Naim Akbar talks about breaking the chains of psychological slavery. We've got to continue to break those chains, because those chains that are there for a reason. If I ask you, what is the first unit that goes to war, oftentimes people want to tell me the first unit that they send off to war are the Marines. And I say, no, the first unit they send off to war is PSYOPs, right? They send off the psychological warfare, and that's where they go. They drop off brochures. They're taking over the radio waves. Now they would be taking over internet and other kinds of stuff, talking about the U.S. as your friend, talking about, that the colonialists are not colonialist and imperialist, that they're there because the people around you have been torturing and putting you in a position where you cannot get liberation. Well, but they don't talk about when they say that we've been starving them off from outside of here, and you can't see the part where we've got the blockades. You can't see the part where we won't let them get access to their own funds in other countries. You can't see the part where, they're any trade partners that they're barraging them and penalizing them if they drop off stuff, whether it's oil or food or allowing them to sell stuff. All of these things are part of the warfare system that has something to do way before any boot on the ground, way before any cannons are launched or missiles are shot. They're already shooting stuff. And we've got to look at the real war before the war that is on TV, right? What is the war? Cuba's been under a war ever since. And that's how we have to look at it.
Brother Akil, you hitting the point. It's interesting. In 2003, I went and Fakunle went with us to Cuba, and we had a meeting with some of the Babalaos down there. The point that you're hitting on, is that we have to understand the culture of Cuba.
Yes, sir.
Right? And part of that is that, the majority of Cuba is people of African descent,
Yes.
And so they brought all their, spiritual
All Africa with them. That's right.
that they could bring, because, they were the ones who were prisoners of war, who were stopped off in Cuba, but they kept an aspect of their spiritual selves, and they continue to do that. And so, the U.S. was trying to index Cuba, during the American Revolution, because they wanted to enslave it and use it to be able to, get the sugar for the rum and all that kind of stuff, right? And so, you had a very interesting dynamic that, particularly, in the Orient, where you have, next to where Haiti and Jamaica is, and Dominican Republic, and is that those were people who came to Cuba, to do the cane and the tobacco, but in Matanzas is where they brought the Africans more directly and so forth, yeah. Right? So you have a very interesting, various spiritual entities down there, doing stuff, but which means that they have a different worldview, right? Which means is that they believe in a different system, right? And that part of the psychological warfare that's been, waged on them, they've been able to maintain that mentality. And so Cuba exists because those Black people, along with other people, who are there, have been resistant and fighting, but they've been making sacrifice, in doing that. Now there are, and we have to be clear that in all belief systems, you have conservative elements. So even in the Orisha, Ifa system, that you'll have, conservative elements. But when I was down when they had you had a number of groups who came down around decades of people of African descent, and right. It was 2 Decembers ago, right? And I was there, and the building I was in, there was a group of people who are doing an initiation, doing a sacrifice, right in the midst of all kinds of stuff, right? And so they were in their own world, their reality. And so there's a lot of people who are doing that, who are connected, who understand, right? Because the truth of the matter is that, the part of the warfare is they're talking about they're going to bring, these billionaires down to Cuba. Now, they think things are bad now, right? The question of education is going to be privatized. The question of healthcare will be privatized, but it was the regular, ordinary Cubans who fought and died to make sure that healthcare was free, that education was free, that it was a society that was based on people trying to deal with their humanity. And they sacrificed many material goods in order to do that. But they're still doing that, right? But with many of us, their psychops, their psychological warfare has penetrated to us a little bit more. You see, we got to remember that Cuba was like the Palenque,
Yes.
in which Sister Asada, could go and have refuge. Sister Nahanda Abiodun could go. Brother Charles Hill could go. And
People like that from all over the world of the oppressed.
That's right. And so what happened is, when they were negotiating and was trying to get together with Sister Asada, they said, we're not doing that. Now that's some major, major sacrifices for someone to do, right? Because that's their principle, right? And so that's why we have to stand with Cuba, as you point out, because it is about the internationalization of us identifying with the broader humanity and understanding that if they get rid of Cuba, they coming after us too, in a more intense way, because they've always been coming after us. They scared, like you said, they fear, what our potential is and so forth. But we have to be able to develop a worldview to see us connected to the world, right? And particularly, not just the African world, but the full world. But we have to prioritize, the African world. We have to prioritize the centrality of Black workers, right? Because it is through our exploitation and extraction that, the system of imperialism exists.
So Professor and Dr. Akil, Professor Tony and Dr. Akil, when we see the United States possibly causing long-term relationships to fracture, like maybe that with Jamaica and Cuba and things like that, how can we step back and see it for what it is, and how could we move forward? Or is there anything that we can do? Is there anything that we can do?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, I want to suggest that we haven't stopped, right? So if you look at right now, there's a meeting of Africans in Colombia. The vice president, I was with the vice president of Colombia in Togo in December. I wasn't able to go there now, but there's a group of
Marquez. She's a great
sister. She's a bad sister. And so they're there right now. Folks from the African Union, they're talking about reparations. They're talking about the whole history of all these things and trying to figure out how we come together, because there's a whole bunch of Africans in Colombia, 25% of the population. So that's what I mean about internationalizing it, is that we can't stop. We had a meeting last week. As a matter of fact, I was on a plane, so I missed the meeting. A lot of people complained about the 9th Pan-African Congress, but they didn't stop. Last week on Friday, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, while I was flying to the conference, they had a meeting, an inaugural meeting for the implementation of the findings from the 9th Pan-African Congress. So these things, so we can't see it as they're doing something and we don't have. No, we always been fighting in the midst of their savagery. We were fighting in the midst of ever since they set their foot on the African continent. Africans have been fighting them, been fighting all the different ways that they've proved the deviltry that's there. And we've got to think about it that way. See, we like to talk about niceties. When I teach and talk about slavery, I don't just talk about slavery. I talk about it. I talk about that these were systems of torture, rape, robbery, maiming, all the brutalities of slavery. I strive to talk about with my students, and some of them is not comfortable, and they're not supposed to be comfortable. And then when I talk about the slave trade itself, I don't say the Atlantic slave trade, because the Atlantic Ocean didn't enslave nobody. It was the European slave trade. Name who was enslaving us. Name how they benefited. So when we talk about reparations, we got to talk about the insurance companies that were making money. We got to talk about the churches, the universities, the individuals, the governments, all of those things collectively and how they work together. So those are the battles. That's we have to just up the level on what we've been doing. and find new ways to make those connections. So the spirituality conference is a way to make connections, is a way for people to come together who sometimes we get in our own way, right? That's why the conference in Maryland was important, because sometimes we get in our own way and we don't provide the space for people to have different ideas. I don't care that you do something the way and that the way you do it, maybe I don't like it. Maybe it don't resonate with me. But I tell people all the time when they say we need to stop having meetings, I say there's 1.5 billion approximately Africans in the world. What makes you think your one meeting is enough? What makes you think that your one congress or conference is enough? We need to have all kinds of meetings and discussions to talk about how we transform all the stuff we're working on. And that's really the way we get there, because those are the spaces and places we have dialogue, we have confrontation with each other, we have love with each other, we have uplifting our eyes and our minds and ideas. And it needs to be scholars, but it doesn't need to be just scholars, right? Sometimes the scholars we get in our own way because we only want to talk to each other in our journals. And so I'm working on some stuff now, that writing in ways that we write that communicates with different people. Not that we don't need to communicate at a kind of quote unquote high level, and because that enables the expedited discussions. However, at the same time, I've developed this concept. I haven't executed it yet, but I developed this concept that as scholars, when we write, we need to write what I call companion pieces. So a piece that is written in lay people's language. And so we take all of our ideas and our thoughts and we communicate them in ways that somebody you're saying to problematize something, they don't know what that means. You're saying that you're talking about the sociological imagination. They don't know what that means. But how do you say that in simple ways so that people can use it in everyday language? And I tell my students to the things that they're learning, go teach them. The best way to learn yourself is to give it away. You go into the barbershop, talk about the stuff you learned in sociology and African studies in the barbershop. You going to get your nails done, sister, talk about it over there. You're hanging out with your girls, you're going out on the weekend, have some conversation that isn't just about Johnny and Stefan. Have some conversations about revolution. And that's where we got to get it to. We got to get it to the places where they're having things like that. And then we got to figure out how the young folks who are talking about other stuff, get them to start talking about conscious stuff in their social media spaces, because they'll sit at the table and only talk to themselves over their phones. They'll be laughing across the table and not say a single word. But we got to get them to, even if they do that, how do they talk about the conscious stuff that's going to change our realities?
Mm-hmm. And Professor Tony, you were about to say as well? I'm sorry.
No, all of what Akil said. And, so we have to build a new conscious movement up, and we have to, so that we have to start building assemblies in our communities, in our blocks, in which that people are having conversations, are struggling around differences. We have to be conscious of the people who want to disrupt that, who want to shut that down. But even with people, as Brother Akil said, even when people disagree. Okay, what you say? Okay, fine. Well, anybody else? So we have to build a new student movement, a new worker movement, new women's movement, Black women's movement. Because that's the way that we can communicate. That's the way that we're going to learn. My own development came out of the student movement. My own development came out, of the revolutionary movement. It was people who didn't have degrees, right? Who were brilliant. And the people, who was part of that process, the folks who got degrees still can't hang with them. You know what I'm saying? The Queen Mother Moores, we used to bring Queen Mother Moore up to Boston. And, when we were students and she would keep us up 3 o'clock at night talking to us, right? We'd be falling asleep. And she said, I see you all the time, honey. So I'm going to go to rest, right? And so forth, right? And so, but it wasn't just her, it was other people who were workers who was trying to make a difference, who were sacrificing, to do that. So Brother Akil is correct, is that we got to go beyond academia. We got to go into the neighborhoods. We got to listen to what the people in the barber shops and the beauty parlors, working in the stores and so forth are saying, right? And try to incorporate that. But we got to raise the awareness. You know, we got to have in the churches, we got to talk about, you know, what's happening in Cuba, what is happening, you know, was wrong. We got to remind them of Dr. King, you know.
There's a Martin Luther King Center in Cuba that blows people's minds every time I tell them that.
Exactly. And then we got to do what Malcolm said. You know, whether people are Christians or Baptists or Muslims or whatever they are, we got to put that aside, right? You know, and unite, you know, and so forth, because those are the differences, you know, things have been separating, but we need a new, you know, Black conscious movement, and we need to politicize that, but we got to start where we are. We got to start in our relationships, you know, we got to start in our houses, in our blocks, in places of work and so forth. It's real practical, because what we do, where we are at, impacts what's happening also globally. Right. And we have to connect the global. You know what I'm saying? We got to get off some of that crazy media stuff and start really connecting, you know, with the people that Brother Kills talk about that was in Colombia, you know, that's in Cuba, that's in Haiti, you know, that's in Venezuela, that's in Senegal, that's in Ghana, you know, that's in China, that's in Russia, you know, and so forth. We got a lot of work to do, but it starts with our own transformation.
That's right.
Yeah, hey, Brother Tony. One of the things that made me think of is something I've been striving to do and maybe struggling with, is that one of the things you said was that we need to do like Malcolm said and put those things away. But actually, as a traditional spiritual practitioner, I think we need to think about a different way maybe to consider that. That is that how do we bring it actually to the forefront? Because pushing it to the back hasn't worked well for us. And pushing it to the back has for some folks that they don't bring their full self to the table when they push their spiritual system back. So maybe we need to figure out a way to contextualize it so that you bring your spiritual system to the table and there's a place and time for it, but that is not right this second, but we want you here, wholly here, right? So we still need all of us.
Right.
If we're going to have a prayer circle, we need all of us to participate in the prayer circle from whatever perspective you come from to push away the white supremacist struggles to oppress us. And so we can sit down and let the Muslims pray the way they do, the Yorubas pray the way they do, the Kemetic folks to pray the way they do, but we need to all be at the same table praying at the same time, so that we can bring that energy as diverse ways that it is to the table. Because otherwise, what you're praying is about one thing, and another person's about something else. And this sister from Sister Attila from she's with the
I just spoke with her this morning.
She's with Mansa, the Senegalese spiritual system. And what she said one day when I was at her reading of the year, she said, we need to, if you're doing a prayer, make sure you do a prayer out loud when you're in community so everybody can hear what you're praying about.
Yeah, and let me just say this, because we're going to have to wait, Professor Tony, I'm going to let you get the last word before Asia closes us out with the most important question. That this is definitely garnering a part 2 of this conversation. So I wanted you, Professor Tony, to give us the last word. And then Asia, can you give us the question that we asked all our guests?
Your brother Achilles is correct. And the point that I'm making is that we have to put aside the things that keep us from doing that, right? And so forth. And then our practice have to be one of inclusion. But the point I'm saying is that it's not one of dominance, and so forth. Part of the work that I've done, as an Ifa priest, is work with the Baptists, work with the Buddhists, work with Muslims, and so forth. I don't know if you know, for example, I'm chair of the community university in North Carolina, and the director is a Muslim, and we share. So I'm saying is that we have to share, right? But we can't let those differences get in the way. We have to find that common bond. I want to recommend, particularly in light of what's happening with Gaza, for people to see the kingdom of heaven, that was happening during the Crusades, in which, the Jews and Muslims were working together before the crazies came about, and we got crazies in our own spaces, to prevent that, and respect that. And so, and I work with a lot of churches, and when they start to go up, I say, excuse me, you got somebody here, we need to hear what the Muslims have to say, we hear what the Yorubas have to say, what the Akan have to say, so you are correct and so forth. But we have to find more ways to integrate that, to do that, because part of the psychological warfare is still, letting people know, what y'all doing is the boogeyman stuff. You see what I'm saying? And that starts fights, and so forth. But you're right.
It turns people away.
That's right. We have to build these inner faith collaborations and so forth, and to do that. And people have to come as they are, and when they want to get the Holy Ghost and pray, let them do it. And then says, yep. And so, in the next point on the agenda is, and who's going to be responsible for this, and who's going to do that, and come on and sing that song that your grandmother used to do, and so forth. Yeah, I'm with that.
Amen.
Because the day happens to be Eid al-Fitr, or the end of the Ramadan fast, and it's a big deal for Muslims. And I'm a Malcolm Muslim and an Ifa practitioner. And you give me some more weapons, I'll put them on the table too. I'll get down. Right?
Okay, so Asia, can you ask our most important question?
Yes, and so for our two guests, who is your favorite rap artist, rap group, or rap song?
I'm going to say Fight the Power again.
Why are you stealing my song?
We can share.
Right. There you go.
You better be able to.
That's unity. That's unity, brother. That's unity.
Right. Yeah. We didn't even plan that one. That worked out well.
Okay.
Before I get off of here, I got to say that tomorrow is the 8th Pan-African. The 8th African Spirituality Conference at Essex County College in Newark, New Jersey, and that's going to start at 11 o'clock. It is going to be a powerful session you do not want to miss. We have Ifa priests, we have a voodoo priest, we have a Rastafari priest, all coming to the table, and from the Senegalese tradition, Sangoma from South Africa. It's going to be a powerful day. Yeah. So you don't want to miss that.
Be online.
We have an online link. If you send me a message, I'll send it to you.
Taylor sent me the flyer because I talked with her today, because I know you told me about it, but I need to hook up online because I want to check it out.
Right.
Okay. And then this is the 25th anniversary of the Africana Institute. I put the link in the chat. If somebody can post it, we need y'all to come on it, and that's going to be May the 14th.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Professor Tony, any last words?
Fight the power,
Fight the power. Okay.
Organize, as Kwame would say. Stick and move champ like Muhammad Ali.
I say.
Well, thank you both for being here, and maybe we'll have to do part 2 of this before May 14th, so we can do a lead up to that as well, and then we can also get feedback on how your conference went this weekend as well. Okay.
Sounds great.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, have a good evening, all.
Have a good evening.
All right. Take care, y'all.
We'll see you.
And Zaid, do you want to prepare our closeout by thanking everybody, all our guests for today?
We had quite a few. We want to apologize that we weren't able to have Mayor Baraka do his normal hour on the 3rd Friday. We'll have him back on the next 3rd Friday. Myra Lawson, who has been running the Weequahic High School Alumni Association for the past 14 years, was on, and Asia and Myra got their signals crossed, and blame it on Jonathan because he's always mixing that stuff up. Right?
You hijacked my guest. You hijacked.
Or your guest. Right, and it's good to see Myra. I hadn't seen Myra in several years, and the Weequahic Alumni Association is a very unique alumni association story in our community. It's a great story. We were glad to have her on, and their upcoming event. I put that in the chat, and then of course these two incredible men right here, right? Professor Akil,
As well as Liza and Patterson.
oh, my son and daughter from the Patterson Healing Collective, right? March 31st, their one-day symposium celebrating and affirming 5 years of making peace in some of the most violent streets in Jersey. That is Patterson, New Jersey. It's great to have them on. They will be regulars as they have been, and of course these two great brothers right here.
Okay, and I just want to remind everybody to go on to Medgar Evers' website, and they're having their National Black Writers Conference that begins on this Wednesday coming up. It's always Dr. Brenda Green is the founder, and it's always, I've attended a couple of years. I haven't attended in the last couple of years, but I know when I went, Sonia Sanchez was in the audience. It's a beautiful conference to be at.
You know what is, right?
I'm sorry. Yes, I do. Both, and I learned her. Talib Kweli is her son, but I learned that her other son is a legal scholar, and he's at Columbia as well. So Dr. Brenda Green is a force to be reckoned with. But we just want to say thank you. Have a wonderful weekend and happy first day of spring.
No Kings, March 28th. We're gonna shut Newark down. And you don't stop.
That's right. Zaid, you have to shut us down tonight.
I don't have the controls.